across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. Julia, of course, back tomorrow at 10 right here on Talk. So King Charles has delivered his third King's speech earlier today, marking the 2026 state opening of Parliament and the beginning of a new session. He announced bills on digital ID, closer ties with the EU and even peerages. We'll be looking into that in a few moments. At the same time, Health Secretary Wes Streeting is reportedly set to resign as early as tomorrow in order to challenge Keir Starmer for the Labour leadership. They had a very brief meeting this morning. Sources say Streeting is determined to launch a bid, which means that others will launch a bid. Grab your popcorn, kids. This is about to get very exciting. And Goldman Sachs is warning that the unrest over Sir Keir Starmer's leadership could cost Rachel Reeves £12 billion in public finances. The Wall Street Bank stated that the sharp rise in government borrowing costs will reduce the Chancellor's fiscal headroom to balance the national accounts. Details to come, everything you need to know. We'll bring you all the breaking news, and boy, there's always some breaking news at the moment. Lots to get through. Lines are open, 0344 499 1000. You can leave a voice note there as well. Chloe Dobbs with us shortly, and you can message 87222. It's 1:05. So, this is what today was supposed to be about.
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, an increasingly dangerous and volatile
this,
world
of course, should have been the only focus today. Unfortunately, a psychodrama was being played out elsewhere. Keir Starmer currently clinging to Downing Street like a man trying to save a deck chair during a tsunami. The knives are not merely out, they've been organised into a full cutlery drawer. Starmer spent the week, of course, holding emergency meetings with cabinet allies and leadership rival Wes Streeting. Wes went in this morning, 16-minute audience with the Prime Minister at number 10, reportedly had all the warmth of a dental checkup. It was not, I sense, something that ended well. And of course the numbers are grim, and I was crunching these numbers earlier, looking at the various forecasts. One tracker suggesting at least 92 Labour MPs prepared to oust him. Other reports suggest nearly 90 MPs and several ministers have openly urged him to go. Starmer insists that no formal leadership threshold has been met, which might be technically true, but that's technically true in the same way the band continuing to play on the Titanic. You take the point. Meanwhile, more than 100 MPs have actually signed a loyalty letter backing the Prime Minister. Reassuring maybe, until you remember, of course, that there are actually 400 Labour MPs. So if you've got a mere quarter of them, you're not doing so well. So from Wes to Ed, because after the Health Secretary had that brief encounter this morning with Keir, we now understand that as soon as Wes presses the green light, Ed Miliband will do the same, lining up to take on the Health Secretary. It's extraordinary. Let me ask you this. From a non-Labour point of view, who would you prefer as Prime Minister? If you're a non-Labour voter, who would you prefer as Prime Minister? So it was extraordinary to have this chaos unfolding when literally 40 seconds around the corner, 32 white horses and a gold coach were travelling down the road as if nothing had happened. It would have been better for the King to take a flipping Uber, for goodness sake. So these two events occurring almost simultaneously. And meantime, of course, the King was probably thinking, I would have been better to have Zoom called this speech in today. But he did actually have a lot to say. Let's take a look. You might not like all of it. Have a listen to this.
My ministers will also proceed with the introduction of digital ID that will modernise how citizens interact with public services.
Yeah, really, all of that, all the billions of pounds in order to have a swift access to getting your gas bill? Really? I'm cynical. That's, of course, one of the areas that you might think, yeah, Good old king, exactly how I want my royal family, the people who made tracking my life mandatory. It got better. We also had a reiteration about our relationship with Europe.
My ministers will introduce legislation to take advantage of new trading opportunities, including a bill to strengthen ties with the European Union.
Hurrah! And of course, it wasn't all bad news. There was a stark message for Peter Mandelson.
My ministers will also introduce legislation to enable peerages to be removed.
Hey, he's gone. Will be. Well, as the king continued his regal speech, flanked by ermine and gold, Keir Starmer looked like a man who would rather be dropped into a pool of alligators. Anywhere but here, you could see the air bubble above his head. And with the speech done, the infighting simply continues. Ed or Wes or someone else. Let me ask you this. As a non-Labour voter, who would you prefer to be the next Labour leader and therefore our next Prime Minister? 0344 499 1000. You can drop us a voice note on that number as well. And if you're messaging, it's 87222. As a non-Labour voter, who would you prefer? Who's your, the least worst option, the best worst least option? You know what I'm saying. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Let's speak with Chloe Dobbs, political commentator, arch socialist, and always great to have you on with us.
This man is spreading fake news.
Sure, I am spreading fake news. Just a point on the king, by the way, when he makes a speech, and I was saying earlier that I went to one of these state openings once, and it was the most incredible thing to be among.
I quite like one of those outfits.
It was, I mean, they got all the outfits, the pomp, the ceremony, all the hats. I remember when I went, Thatcher was still in there, Lord Sugar was there, and a lot of old duffers, but people you recognise. It was, this was only last year, and that was the weirdest thing. But it was, it's probably about 15 years ago, and it was wow, this is quite incredible. When you look at it today, I don't know. I don't know whether it's because we've got the king and not the queen, whether it feels quite the same, or whether it's because of this backdrop of noise that this was all being done against. You could see Keir Starmer thinking, take me home, Bubba. That was a sort of thought that this poor fella was going. He's about to go back to Downing Street, knowing that that could be the very last, and will be the very last, royal speech that he encounters.
Yeah, I mean, it's
only his, second one?
It's probably both. I mean, first of all, I think that there probably isn't ever going to be another monarch who is cherished like Queen Elizabeth II was, because she was almost like everybody's grandma, because she was there for longer than probably any other monarch ever will be, almost her entire life. And so she was such a central part to all of our lives. But it is also the fact that there was clearly a bit of a sombre vibe in the air, given everyone knew this speech is probably completely redundant. I think it was quite embarrassing for the king. We heard last night reports that Buckingham Palace was in conversation with Downing Street about what they should do. Apparently the King's speech, you can't edit it at the last minute because it's written, I think it's on some sort of leather or something with some special ink several days in advance, which requires several days to dry. So there was no opportunity for any last...
What kind of inks that? You take that back.
I know, they really are living in the dark ages. Yeah, I mean, you're right, Keir Starmer, that is probably most definitely the last King's speech that he will ever hear. And if he could potentially be gone this week. Wes Streeting may launch a leadership contest this week, and then it seems as though what Keir Starmer has announced, not Keir Starmer, what the King has announced is almost redundant. I mean, I'm sure that Labour will carry on with some of the stuff there, but I think it's quite embarrassing the position that they've put the King in there.
It is, and word on the royal street is that the king was not very happy. Seen through silhouette in the palace windows, lobbing the crown at a wall.
Yeah, I mean...
I made that big. You actually digested that as if that was serious. It's more fake news.
Say it again.
He threw a crown at the wall.
Oh, I thought you said that people were sort of plotting behind the walls.
No, literally.
Sort of whispering in the back of the room about their leadership bids, which they probably were.
Well, I mean, from one psychodrama in the palace to another one in Downing Street, I mean, they are just minutes apart, these two buildings, of course, and this is all going... I mean, it can't have pleased the palace, but Keir Starmer is now, must be close to kind of losing his mind. You can't stay You can't stay relaxed and in control.
I mean, I think he's been losing his mind and out of control for a long time. But the problem is that his ego is too big, and he's unwilling to do the humble thing and just step aside. He thinks that he's... I mean, when he gave that reset speech after the local elections...
With the repeat of a speech he'd already given before.
The millionth reset, I've lost count of how many there are. I mean, it was pretty tone deaf. And when he said... oh, I take responsibility for the election results. He then quickly said, I take responsibility for all the incredible things that we've achieved in this 2 years in government. And you just knew it was total lies. Everyone knows you've achieved barely anything. I mean, if I hear breakfast clubs one more time, I'm going to, you know...
Love a breakfast club.
I'm going to pull my hair out. He's just making up... You know, this is what they do. They play with the statistics to make it sound like they've achieved loads of amazing things. And he thought that everyone was going to buy it, the public and his backbench MPs. But I don't think it went down very well at all. It was perhaps the most impassioned he's ever sounded. But for Starmer, it's a pretty low bar.
It's interesting, isn't it? The weather is often very symbolic and metaphoric as well.
It's raining outside.
Yeah, did you
remember when Rishi Sunak out there in the rain?
Well, I was about to say that. Margaret in Birmingham says, did you notice that when Starmer and Lady Vic came out of number 10 there was a hailstorm? That was an omen. Storm clouds are looming. Oh, sorry.
Can't possibly be a coincidence.
Well, it can't, as you rightly said, Rishi Sunak got the big job. Well, there was two, actually. When Liz Truss got the job...
They didn't even give him an umbrella.
Do you remember, Liz, she had to keep circling until she'd been to the palace to... say I want to form a government or whatever the formality is, and then they'd driven her back and she was about to go into Downing Street and absolutely chucked it down. So they carried on driving, and so you had this curious situation where, you know, they were sort of stuck in Trafalgar Square or something, and people going, what's that, the Prime Minister? And then
I don't remember that.
Yeah, and it was you know, it was brief, but it kind of happened. And then, but when Rishi did it, I mean, he got... You know, that was a fella that used to wear about 38 grand's worth of suit. So that was not a good day. He was absolutely drenched. Give the man a brolly.
I know. I mean, they've got plenty of expensive Range Rovers and whatnot. You think they could afford a brolly?
So they had a meeting today in Downing Street where there was no rain, but the weather, the political weather was tense. Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting. He's obviously gone in there and said, look, Prime Minister, you know, I've had utmost respect for you over the years, but I am going to challenge you. I think he must have said that. I don't think he could have said, I will challenge you if you don't do X, Y, Z. It must have been a straight conversation.
I think it was a pretty frank conversation, which I think we can guess by the length of it. He was in there at 8:24 and out at 8:42. So it was pretty short and sweet. And you'll notice that when he came in and out of Downing Street, first of all, he chose to go in via the front door. He could have chosen one of the back doors, as Darren Jones did, but he wanted to be seen, and he walked in very proudly, very confidently, and when he came back out again, he looked pretty pleased with himself, which suggests to me this isn't a man who's bottled it, as the press have been suggesting. He clearly wants to quell those rumours and show I'm in a good position. And what he may have gone in and told Starmer is, I've got the 81 MPs. I'm ready as soon as this King's speech is over tomorrow to launch this leadership. If you don't he might have said, if you don't go now, you know, by tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, I will be resigning and launching a leadership challenge, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, allies of Streeting have told the BBC they expect him to challenge Starmer for leadership as soon as tomorrow. Now, that's going to fire off another couple of variables in this, because the minute Streeting says, I'm going for it, we understand Ed Miliband will simultaneously pretty much launch a campaign as well. Although, you see, it is be careful what you wish for stuff, isn't it? Because there's a bit of me that thinks, well, Ed, the only person I can think that would be demonstrably worse than Starmer would be Ed Miliband, in terms of the rest of the country going, who is this man who speaks a bit weirdly, looks a little bit odd, like from a Wallace and Gromit caricature, and he's our Prime Minister. So I don't think he'll
fare... ukulele too.
Of course he has. I didn't know that, but he's got a ukulele.
You haven't seen the Ed Miliband ukulele clip?
I haven't. Well, I've seen him do lots of weird things.
We must have it somewhere. I'm sure we can play it.
Have we played it before? I've just been told we've played it so many times. Well, we played a montage, haven't we, of him doing sort of wacky stuff. It's in the montage.
I'd like to see him playing a ukulele at a lectern outside Downing Street. Maybe he could be Prime Minister if he plays us a ukulele song to the nation every morning.
When I'm beating streeting. Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I've been quite surprised with how little...
It was all right, wasn't it?
I've been quite surprised with how little attention Ed Miliband has been getting. Everybody is just talking about Wes Streeting, Rayner, and Andy Burnham. So Wes Streeting, of course, being the more centrist candidate, and Rayner and Burnham being the soft left candidates. But neither Burnham nor Rayner have their ducks in a row right now. Angela Rayner was hoping that her tax affairs, her investigation with HMRC would be over before the local elections. That hasn't happened, so she's not ready to put her hat in the ring right now. And Andy Burnham, of course, isn't in Parliament. And they're not just going to allow Wes Streeting to have a free run without a soft left candidate. It's going to be Ed Miliband if Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham aren't ready. So I'm quite surprised that nobody's been talking about Ed Miliband. And it is often the case in leadership elections that it is the underdog that nobody talks about right at the beginning that ends up getting the job.
But Wes knows, Chloe. He knows that if if we all know, because you've just got to look at the numbers and which MPs support which candidates, that Wes will not become Prime Minister. I used to have, when Wes Streeting was a councillor, he used to come on my radio show almost every week for about 2 years, and he was a Labour councillor in Essex, and he was hoping to get the stand as an MP. And I looked at the guy and I got to know him a little bit, and I thought he's definitely going to become an MP. He'll definitely do well. But I never thought this guy is prime ministerial. Plus, at the time, I mean, I'm only a young buck myself, but he looked about 10, and he's not much older now. So he's got the youth on his side, but he's not going to do it. So why would he put his hat in the ring if he knows the numbers? Just mathematically, the numbers don't support him.
Well, if you don't shoot, you don't score. And I guess what he is hoping is that if he can get out the blocks before Rayner and Burnham have a chance to enter, that maybe he's got a shot. But I mean, we had been hearing that Ed Miliband, he doesn't really want the job. He doesn't really want to be Prime Minister. So Ed Miliband would be someone who, or I expect, only goes in as someone who's acquiescing and saying, OK, because you guys who I'd rather have it are not ready, I guess I'll do it. But is he going to bring the passion and the determination?
So, OK, let me ask you this then,
but it's going to be really difficult with the membership, with Wes.
OK, let me ask you, as a non-Labour person, I think we can safely say you're not a Labour person, who would you want to have the job?
Wes, definitely.
You want Wes?
Yes.
OK.
He is the only one to me who seems like he's got a few brain cells in his noggin. He's the only one who seems kind of sharp. As with most of the ministers,
working class guy, first person in his family to go to university, and ended up at Oxbridge, you know, so he's done all right.
Yeah, I mean, as with most of the ministers, I'm disappointed with the lack of progress in their 2 years in government. But what I will say with Wes Streeting is that he is the only one, for example, with the NHS who has been willing to have the frank conversations about trying different things in the NHS, rather than saying just throw more money at it. That's all it needs, just needs more money. He has said, yes, we do need to look at how this is structured, we do need to look at the excessive management and so on. So he seems like someone who's willing to think outside the box.
This comes from Paul. He says, been watching the King's speech. He looked decidedly uncomfortable reading that speech that, of course, he didn't write. It would have been great, wouldn't it, if he'd have read that bit when he said, we will have closer ties with the EU, if he'd just looked up and went, really? Just that moment would have been quite nice. Paul goes on to say, I was hoping he was going to say something out of corp. Out of corp? Is that a phrase?
I don't know. I think he might.
Out of corp.
Either that's a misspelling or this person's smarter than us too.
Is it an acting phrase? Yeah, maybe it's an acting phrase. Anyway, and not in the speech about the government. I think what he's saying is exactly what we're saying, that he would have just gone off piste and said so. He said, I don't get this, though. He repeatedly said, his government, my ministers. If it's his government, HM government, and his ministers, why is that he cannot remove his government or his ministers, including the PM, who is the problem? We have no written constitution. We did talk about that yesterday. Thank you to Paul in Cornwall, military veteran, former police service too. Thank you, Paul, for that. Sorry, I didn't get the court bit, but I think we know what you meant. Yesterday, Rupert Bell, our royal correspondent, said that, I mean, in theory, on paper, he could say it's my government, so I can dissolve Parliament, but apparently not really.
Well, I mean,
so in theory, but not really.
Yes.
What does that mean?
I mean, pretty much. The monarchy used to, of course, have more power, and as times have become modern, the only way that you can still justify its existence is if its power is, very much diminished, and they only have a very small few levers that they can pull with regards to
I mean, if he tried it,
power.
if he gave it a go, would they come to the king and go, sorry, you can't actually do that, Your Majesty? You think you can, but you can't.
I don't know exactly.
Why am I wearing this crown?
I don't know exactly what the rules are, but I think it'd be pretty impossible for the king to just say, right, we're just going to dissolve Parliament, get rid of it altogether because I don't like the guy. Because if you gave them that power, he simply could do that to Farage if he came into.
Do it to anybody if you had that power. We'll talk more to Chloe in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. So, as a non-Labour voter, who would you prefer as the next Prime Minister? Lines are open on that. Back with more coming next on Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. What about this then? Chloe Dobbs still with us, of course. A Big Brother Watch study has revealed that freedom of expression in Britain is a postcode lottery, with the police in some areas up to 30 times more likely to make an arrest for speech-related offences. Clearly, this leads to situations like this.
Basically, our hate crime team reviewed it and said there are offences there we need to explore.
Okay.
Basically, Section 19 refers to spreading what we say like racial hatred. So you've posted something online that we believe is spreading racial hatred.
Twitter, Facebook,
I can't explain too much. Obviously, if you've got stuff you'd like to gather, obviously I'm more than willing to talk through what you're able to take with you.
What, you're taking me away now?
Yes, so you're under arrest, so you're going to Harrogate, unfortunately.
You're taking me to Harrogate in the middle of the night over a tweet?
I am, unfortunately.
Yeah, because you're a mad racist. That'll be the reason. That's what the police would say.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not buying. I don't buy into this. Well, I only put it on Facebook. No, you incited racial hatred. Get to jail, you moron. Simple as that.
He probably just said stop the boats.
Take him to the tower.
Probably just said stop the boats.
No,
maybe there are going to be coppers outside the studio.
But he was more worried about going to Harrogate than he was to go to jail, wasn't he? To Harrogate? In the middle of the night? What sort of country is that?
Why do they come in the middle of the night? Wake you up at 2 in the morning as if you're an actual terrorist who's about to detonate a bomb who needs to be as a matter of urgency. And they often have 10 coppers turn up to arrest one person.
I think I know why they do it.
It's a power trip.
Yeah, but no, I think it's this. I think it's once they've been alerted to it, they think, right, we've got to get there as quick as we can, because if we don't, every device this guy has is going to be thrown out of a window and we'll never find a thing. I think that's the thinking. However, you don't send people to jail for this.
The police don't warn you in advance. Oh, we're on our way to come and arrest you, right? It's not the case. If you don't know the police are coming, you're not going to chuckle your devices out the window.
No, but you might, by that stage, you've put something on there a couple of hours ago, and everyone's going, mate, you want to take that down because the old bill. They'll come knock. I don't know. I'm taking a guess. I don't buy into, by the way, just because you put something online and then it's okay to do that. It's not okay to put anything online. You can't libel people. You can't say that the bloke round the corner is a paedophile when he's not. So,
really?
Yeah, strange that, isn't it?
I do that every day.
You can't say don't go to Jim's cafe because his sausages stink and they'll poison your family. So stuff like that. But no one should be going to jail for this stuff. No. Let's be honest. Being a half-wit and an idiot is not a criminal offence.
No, it's not. And we're supposed to be a country that prides itself on freedom of speech, and Keir Starmer doesn't seem to care about that.
But it can depend on where you live.
But this is the thing, is I have put some blame on Keir Starmer there, because I do think that he could, aside from, we had the odd comment come out saying, oh yes, we do think the police should be policing the streets and not your tweets, but there wasn't really that much, they clearly didn't seem that passionate about it. But I do think a lot of responsibility comes down to individual police forces, and that's why we've got, with this data that's been analysed by Big Brother Watch, one police force, for example, in that area, you're 30 times more likely to be arrested for a hate crime. It's two things. It's the fact that I think there are some very good coppers, but the police force does attract a lot of bad eggs. That is a role that will attract people who have insecurities and power issues and want something that makes them feel powerful and important, and they love nothing more than, whether it's in lockdown, going after a woman for having a coffee on a bench, or in this case going after people for having to eat. And also it is very, kind of lazy civil service, like, where people just want the easy job. They want the easy shift. They clock in, they clock out, they do their hours and they want to go, rather than do the hard work and go after serious criminals. Oh, if I can just sit at my desk all day and just scroll through some tweets and pick out some things people ought to be arrested for, that's much better than, getting my hands dirty and going out and doing the serious work.
I think that's the bit that is kind of strange. Not only, as you mentioned, middle of the night raid, but taking all your devices away.
That's a power trip.
I mean, the devices thing.
It's obviously a power trip.
I don't think it's a power trip in the sense that the police station went, oh, let's go on a power trip. I think every time I talk to a copper, they go, oh, mate, you have no idea. When we're sent to one of those jobs, it's a pain in the arse. We don't want to be doing that. We want to be catching bad guys. So somebody orchestrates it, and it does predate Keir Starmer as well, this kind of stuff. It's been going on for some years. So there's that's weird. The searching your entire house like you're a serial killer is kind of weird, right? I mean, if you were seen to have, I don't know, stood in the middle of the high street and said a load of stuff in a megaphone, which is sort of similar offence, if you like, they probably wouldn't raid your house. But something about putting it online brings out this response from the authorities, or has been of late. It's meant to be calming down, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems completely out of proportion to me. And yes, I agree with you that there are coppers who are, sometimes they're doing this and thinking, oh, I'm doing this begrudgingly because I've been given an order from above. But you do see on some of this footage like that, where you can clearly see the officer is going to arrest them. It's like they're getting a kick out of it. They're going for them way more than they need to. They're getting shouty. They're being way more demanding than they need to be. And it is clear that there are some people that get a kick out of this because they are insecure, and this makes them feel powerful.
But the copper themselves don't get a choice of where they're sent. I mean, they could be sent to a robbery, they could be sent to a non-crime hate incident.
That's true, but I expect that they have some say in the matter as to which department they want to be in and what, which crimes that they want to focus on. And there will be, if you're put on a job, some coppers are going to enjoy it, some others are not going to enjoy it. And it's very clear from the footage we see that there are at least some coppers who enjoy this sort of thing.
I've never met one. They absolutely hate it. It's short straw central when you get told you're going round to Alf's house and take his iPhone away because he's told the woman next door she's a silly old cow.
Well, it's often these, as you say...
Maybe they've got nothing else to do. Maybe there is no crime in these areas. That's the only thing that's happening.
I mean that is true. If it were, for example, the case that the speech that the police are generally going after is the wave of anti-Semitism that we've been seeing, they're going after anti-Semitic posts, then you might find that there are certain, you probably will find there are certain communities where anti-Semitism is more rife than in other areas. So there might be more policing in one than the other, but I have a feeling it is specific police forces when the few individuals that are in charge who are giving those orders, the officers below them, they are the ones who are doing this as some sort of power trip, and also a way to do the easy work rather than policing proper crimes.
Georgina in Cambridge says, I completely agree with Chloe. If I was a Labour supporter, Wes would get my vote. God help us if it's crazy Ed. We have somebody here says Carl Turner for MP. Of course, he lost the whip as a Labour MP, but he does seem rather entertaining to listen to and have a whinge up. We've hit the clock, Chloe.
Alas.
You are relinquished. You are free to go. But thank you. You can answer.
Oh, I thought that was going to cut out then.
That's all right. Bye. You know, I don't know. Usual conversation.
Try not to miss me too much before next week.
We wouldn't.
It just seemed like that was when it was going to cut to breaks. No,
is it?
Yeah.
I mean,
it wasn't because I didn't want to
stop
respond.
talking. But there we go.
Fine, I will leave then.
Apart from at the point when you're meant to talk.
We've fallen out now. I'm not coming back.
Well, no, that's why you're booked in here, isn't it, to talk? Chloe Dobbs with us on the programme. 0344 499 1000. On that question, if you're a non-Labour voter, who would you prefer as the next PM? And we're thinking the obvious list that is out there at the moment. There's Rayner, there's who's that fella in Manchester, Chloe? Burnham, Andy Burnham.
That guy.
We've obviously got Wes Streeting, we've got Ed Miliband, might be a couple of others you want to throw into the ring as well. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
25 to 2. Martin in Cambridge says there is one sensible option for a new PM, and that's John Healey with Darren Jones as Chancellor. Anything else is a disaster. Wes won't get the votes, says Martin. No, and the confusing thing about these kind of stories is that Wes and his team, but those that are the most senior supporters of his campaign, they would know that to be the case. They would be fully aware that the numbers don't stack up, because once you launch a leadership bid, then others do the same. You just got to count the heads. It wouldn't stack up, but it does launch the bid. And it does oust Starmer. Unless, of course, Starmer wins it and puts his own name firmly in there as well. Mrs. Thatcher, of course, did that once upon a time. Lots to talk about here, of course. Buckingham Palace, we understand, met with Downing Street last night. This was amid concerns about all of this going on at the moment, the chaos, that it might overshadow the King's speech today. The King address took place. It included closer ties with the EU, power to strip peerages. One of Peter Mandelson was watching that. Digital ID, asylum appeals, overhauls, energy independence bill, police reform and British Steel. There was a lot in there. In a moment, we'll speak to Annabelle Denham, senior political commentator at The Telegraph. First, the author and journalist Alexander Larman joins us. Alexander, good afternoon to you. I mean, was this, I don't know whether we can rank King's speeches or monarch speeches. You don't often hear people, do you remember 1999? It was an absolute peach of a regal speech. But nonetheless, this isn't something, of course, the Palace write. Is it something that the Palace can edit in any shape or form, to your knowledge?
Good afternoon, Ian. No, it's not something that the palace has any kind of input into whatsoever, and it never has been. And I think what's important to make the distinction between is a speech like the one that Charles gave to Congress a couple of weeks ago, which is very much his speech. It was a speech which the government would have seen and given advice about, but it was a speech that was written in consultation with Charles. It was very much his thoughts, his ideas, and what he wants to focus on. And the King's speech today, which he had nothing to do with, I think that all you can be doing if you really want to look for any kind of input is exactly how he phrased things. And I think that a few people might see some of his inflections were slightly quizzical. There was the odd hint of a raised eyebrow and so forth. But you really are digging quite deeply.
You really are, because you can easily project that, can't you, onto somebody and think, was there a react? Did I hear a breath there? Was that a sigh? Or was he just drawing a breath? You can play all of those kind of games. It is ceremonial, and it's part of our system. It looks incredible. You know, if you like gold and ermine, then this is the place to be, right?
I'm a big fan myself. I mean, certainly it's one of those things for every single year. The King's speech is one of those events that it does show pageantry, and it does show what we're good at as a nation in terms of the ceremony and the pomp and circumstance and all the stuff with black rod knocking and things like that. And what's interesting, of course, this year is that, as you said a moment ago, what has slightly overshadowed, not slightly, what's entirely overshadowed the King's speech is the political drama behind it. Because obviously what we've seen is the fact that last night Buckingham Palace were supposedly asking, can the King's speech go ahead? Because the King does not want to look like an idiot. He doesn't want to be in a position that in a matter of a few hours, he's being told, right, well, there's going to be this leadership challenge led by Wes Streeting or Andy Burnham or whoever else, which actually could mean that the Prime Minister was going to have to stand down. Now, it's not going to be quite as urgent as that, but there is a very, very good chance that this King's speech is not going to actually take place in legislative forms in any kind of meaningful way. So this King's speech, I mean, presentation-wise, it was arguably his best yet. I mean, it's the fourth one he's done, and every single year he seems to get more into the role. But in terms of the drama behind it, I mean, there hasn't been anything like this in decades.
It's quite extraordinary, isn't it? And it gives you the level of seriousness that the Prime Minister is currently experiencing. On a day of the King's speech, state opening of Parliament, all the other things you have crammed into your diary as a Prime Minister, you wouldn't in any other day of the week say, I've got 16 minutes to have a chat with my health secretary. That you just say, oh, we'll do that in the afternoon, or we'll do it tomorrow. The fact that that happened at all does rather expose the serious nature of what Starmer is in. And I was considering that when they do that slightly curious walk, when each walks with their opposites from the Commons to the Lords. So you have Starmer and Badenoch walking side by side. The lip readers are paid double for these moments. I don't know what was said, but that must be a clunky old moment if you're Keir Starmer right now.
Well, I think being Keir Starmer right now is something of a predicament in every sense. I mean, I wouldn't want to be him for all the tea in China, because I think that he is in a position which I don't like the man. I think he's done a rubbish job as Prime Minister. But on the other hand, you look at because whatever happens now, he's lost. I mean, if he's forced out of office, he would have lost and been another very short-lived Prime Minister. But even if he somehow overcomes this coup and manages to stay in number 10, he will always be weak. He'll always be floor below the waterline. I mean, assuming that Wes Streeting does resign tomorrow, which I think is the only option he's got, that is probably going to mount a leadership challenge to him. And so he's going to end up looking very, very weak indeed. I mean, remember what happened with John Major, that he survived people plotting against him, but he never had any authority since. So I think that Starmer is doomed. I mean, the question is, are we talking weeks, months, a couple of years? I don't know. He's not going to win the next election, that's for sure.
Indeed. I suppose that is the one takeaway, although the King's speech is largely symbolic, that maybe Prince or King Charles was thinking, you know, whatever I'm being forced to read out here, I'll still be here tomorrow and you won't. Maybe there is always that little PS to these events.
Well, I think that what we always, I mean, you look at the late Queen and just look how many governments and how many prime ministers she lived through. And of course, what we don't know with the King is how many he's going to be going through, because at the moment we've had Liz Truss, we've had Rishi Sunak, and now we're having Keir Starmer. There could be many more. I mean, we seem to be in this era where, in fact, you've got to go back to David Cameron for the last prime minister to have an entire term. That was a decade ago.
We used to take the mick out of the Italians for this sort of malarkey, didn't we? They were changing their leader every 10 minutes, and I think we're now way ahead of Italy in that respect. Listen, Alexander, great to see you. Thank you for coming on with us. Alexander Larman, he's the author and journalist on the King's Speech. What about the politics? Let's drill down a little bit more on that. Annabelle Denham, senior political commentator at The Telegraph, is with us. Hi, Annabelle.
Good afternoon.
Look, I'm always sort of slightly conflicted because I love a bit of pomp and ceremony. We do something that nowhere else on planet Earth can do. I love seeing the white horses and the gold carriage. You literally see a monarch on a throne with a crown on their head. It's extraordinary. It's great to see the oak panels, the statues, the more than the whiff, the absolute stench of amazing history in that building. So all of that ticks all the great boxes. But this was a little exceptional today, of course, for Keir Starmer, because against the backdrop, in the same postcode as those horses were trotting down the road, Keir Starmer's having a blazing row with his health secretary.
Well, I think today's King's Speech did feel particularly incongruous given the political backdrop. We are an extremely fragmented, divided nation at the moment, as Thursday's election results showed, and Starmer is attempting to quell a major rebellion within his party, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to hold out for much longer, because around the time that the King was delivering his speech, it emerged that Wes Streeting's allies had said the Health Secretary is going to fire the starting gun on a leadership contest. He is going to resign, possibly as soon as tomorrow. And that was a major distraction, not to mention the fact that, you know, if Keir Starmer isn't able to cling on by his fingernails for much longer, then the entire event was ultimately pointless and unnecessary. The content itself, I thought, was pretty meagre and pathetic anyway. There were a few surprises. The policies which were announced themselves were extremely underwhelming. You know, this is coming from a prime minister, from an administration which only 2 days ago accepted the need to move further, faster, that incremental change wasn't going to do it. And yet look at the content of the King's Speech, you know, abolishing NHS England. Well, most people thought that this Labour government had done that months ago. An overhaul of SEND, again, that was something that Bridget Phillipson was promising would get underway last October. Digital ID, well, that was announced, and there was a major U-turn. Now it's made it into the King's Speech. Trials by jury are being limited. Well, that is a deeply unpopular measure, which undermines, you know, really the cornerstone of our legal system, ending leasehold, you know, things around green energy. None of this is going to set the world alight, but perhaps none of it matters, because, you know, the real story, what really matters now, is how long will Keir Starmer remain in number 10? Is he going to set out an orderly timetable in order that Andy Burnham can try to find his way back into Parliament and take over? Or has that moment passed and actually things are going to move much more quickly than certainly I thought was possible, even if you didn't?
No, indeed. If there is well, there will be a change of leader, whether it, as you're alluding to there, Annabelle, whether it happens, you know, by 3:20 on Thursday, I doubt it, or whether it happens in September, this sort of orderly fashion thing, I'll stay on until, you know, it's quite clear I haven't got the support. Where does that leave this speech? Where does it leave it if, you know, a new leader comes in? Is it, do they carry that through? Is that voted for? Because there's a vote on this thing, of course, that follows this. So is that cast in stone, or are all bets off and you go, oh no, you know, that speech, we go, that was Starmer's speech, we've got a different one? I mean, you can change it the following year, but does the perception, if nothing else, will be to dilute anything that's happened before?
Well, you could argue that the reason that this legislative agenda is so unambitious is that it was set out in the knowledge that Starmer might not be the person in number 10 to be delivering it. And therefore, it's the sort of thing that Labour MPs, let's not forget that you've got a whopping majority, will vote through. But the other side to this, Ian, of course, is Whitehall. Are civil servants going to put the elbow grease, assuming that they put elbow grease into much these days, into, you know, helping having draft all of the legislation, all the bills that are required in order to turn these policies into law, to get them onto the statute books? Or will they take a back seat? Will they assume that another government is going to come in, another administration, another prime minister who wants to completely shake things up and do something different entirely? And what all this really speaks to, I think, is the fact that we've got very little idea what a Prime Minister Ed Miliband, a Prime Minister Angela Rayner, a Prime Minister Andy Burnham, or indeed Prime Minister Wes Streeting would really do were they to be running the country. What is their vision for Britain? Why is it that they are so convinced that they would be able to do a better job than Keir Starmer? Now, we have had certain policies and publications emerge from the woodwork over the last few days, from the Tribune Group, from Mainstream, there on the left of the Labour Party, and others, and from the Labour Growth Group, which Wes Streeting, of course, is very closely involved in, setting out some sort of economic agenda going along the lines exactly you'd expect. But, you know, we need more meat on the bones. And that's the sort of quite frightening thing about all of this, is however dreadful you may think the Starmer administration has been, and however uniquely disliked, intensely disliked and unpopular Keir Starmer might be, there is always the possibility that what comes next will be worse.
Indeed. And there were a couple of little nuggets in there that keep the sort of conspiracy theorists happy. And in fact, I currently sort of half including myself in this now, because you're forced into that particular nook if you reside in this country under this particular government. The closer ties with the EU, not quite sure what he means by that, probably rejoin it in his heart. And then, of course, digital currency and digital ID. And I look at that, Annabelle, and I think, OK, let's say there was a valid argument for a slicker form of administration and transactions, etc. If you think of all the things on the to-do list that there are needed in this country at the moment, the idea of spending multiple billions of pounds so that it's easier for me to question me council tax bill does seem like an awful lot of money. It's up the priority list quicker than something like that should be, which does get you scratching your head.
And it wasn't in the Labour manifesto in 2024.
Sure.
Really interesting about digital ID actually is before Starmer announced it, polling had showed it was quite a popular idea. It had majority support from the British public. People were, I was quite surprised really, because I really value civil liberties, but people were instinctively quite supportive of this idea. And then Keir Starmer came out and said that it would become policy, and that support torpedoed. And it really illustrated just how popular the Prime Minister had become, how everything that he was in the reverse Midas touch, almost, rather than touching to gold. It was.
Is there a name for that? The Germans have probably got a very long word for it.
And then on the EU reset, this is something that Starmer has staked his own political future on for some time. I think it was his last roll of the dice, the hope that in promising that he would pull us closer into the EU's gravitational orbit with more alignment on regulation and that sort of thing, he would be able to win back some of the voters he was hemorrhaging to the Green Party, and also slightly sort of outflank the Liberal Democrats, because that's the only thing really that they've been able to differentiate themselves with over the last couple of years. But again, to that speech on Monday, it really lacked ambition. Now, I'm certainly not somebody who's going to advocate rejoining the single market and the customs union, but the problem for Keir Starmer is that in falling short of offering that to the British electorate, he couldn't outflank the Liberal Democrats or indeed the Green Party, who are both committed to ultimately rejoining the EU. They want to find a way to restore our membership. So again, it was just a bit wishy-washy and wasn't going to deliver anything politically, not to mention the fact that, this idea that closer ties with the EU is going to somehow magically fix our economies when the state of the economies in Europe, it was always for the birds.
But but those hardline pro-EU people really think it is some kind of answer to everything, that just by dint of being involved in this curious and massive, ever increasingly large club, everything gets better. And their instinct and their political DNA informs them of that, and I don't think you'll ever talk them down off that ledge. Listen, Annabelle, thank you. Great to have you with us. Lovely analysis from Annabelle Denham, senior political commentator at The Telegraph. Thank you to her. Over to you. Response on all of this. The King's speech, what was in it? Digital ID. What are they playing at? Come on. And, of course, the shenanigans in Downing Street as all of this is going on. Talk about wreck the pomp and ceremony this country is made of. Keir Starmer's throwing glasses at Wes Streeting in number 10 while they're warming up to get the horses out of the hatches. Who would you prefer, though, if you, as a non-Labour voter, of those that are likely to stand, and you might have a few outriders you want to suggest, who would you prefer as the next Prime Minister? 0344 499 1000.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Sinks, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. James says, I remember watching the results for Wes's seat on your election show 2 years ago. I seem to recall he had a very fine majority, so he could lose his seat even if he becomes leader. His majority, I think, and we can check this out, it's a couple of hundred. You're absolutely right, James. It's really low. I think he sits in the sort of top 10 of the lowest majorities. Tim in Suffolk says the King has been made to look stupid to the people purely by the content of the speech. He must have been thinking. I mean, when you've gone through all of that, I mean, trying to get out of one of those gold carriages where the door is about 1.5 feet wide is a big ask for anyone. You know, when you're kind of more senior years, and I say this respectfully, there's that, you've got all that kit on. Wouldn't you just go back to the palace and get absolutely hammered, wouldn't you? After that, you go, I can't be doing it. You see what they made me read? Closer ties to digital ID. Who are these people? It's a fair point. Couple of points here on the arresting, why the police turn up in the middle of the night to arrest somebody because somebody wrote on social media. I mean, they don't always turn up in the middle of the night, but they turn up, sometimes do. Ash in Hastings says, you're overthinking why the police turn up in the middle of the night. It will be scheduled for the late shift to deal with if it's been too busy on the day shift to affect the arrest. It's then just the first available unit to attend. And on this same point, one here says, no name given. Yes, some police officers would want to impress and go over the top. There's not enough monitoring of them. Anyway, how are people able to prove who has written things online when anyone could do it? I've sent this in this way to show you how easy it is. Only eBay for sellers insists on ID, uploading. No other apps or sites do so. How can people prove who's written what? When this has been read, I will change my account back again. I don't quite understand what it... I mean, he's changed his name to just for Ian Collins. Yeah, that's true. But, I mean, is he saying that the bloke that was arrested, it might not have been him that posted it? Is that the point? Yeah, but if you post on your own Facebook account or your own Twitter account, then it's likely to be you, unless you've been hacked. And if you've been hacked, particularly on Facebook and places like that, it's really easy to see almost instantly that you've been hacked. It's there for you to see. It doesn't take an inquisitor or an IT expert to spot that. But I'd certainly widely take the point. Bit of breaking news. Sir Keir Starmer has full confidence in West Streeting. This is according to the Prime Minister's spokesman, even as the Health Secretary looks set to resign in a bid to launch a leadership. This is a farce, isn't it? So Streeting's gone into Downing Street. All right, Keir, any chance I can have your job, please? No? Well, I'm going to try and take it anyway. And then the next statement from Downing Street is Starmer has full confidence in him. Is that being facetious? I don't know. Let's get a voice note on the next PM. Comes from Adam.
It's a bad bunch of all of them, let's be honest. But if anyone, I would slightly go for West Streeting just because he's slightly on the right side of Labour opposed to the far left. But that's about it, mate. Anyway, great show.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Adam. Don't go away if you're hanging on. We will get to you. We're just madly busy here. Gary says, asking me who I would like to see as the next Labour leader is like asking me to choose between being punched in the face or kicked in the privates. Surely the question should be asking is, who do we most not want to be the next Prime Minister? Well, that's tomorrow, don't worry. For me, that would be Big Ange. The woman would be a national embarrassment. I tell you the one I think would most likely... Because we should, in theory, want our Prime Ministers to succeed, even if they're not of our flavour or stripe. Because it's our country, right? You should go, OK, didn't vote for him, don't like him, but I hope to God he grows the economy. But there is a part of all of us that thinks, come on, let's keep the humiliation up so we can get rid of this lot. There is that sense. Angela Ray, I think Ed Miliband would make a better job of humiliating the country and his own party than Angela Rayner, although I do tend to... It would be quite close, wouldn't it? So many comments on this. You want to drop us a voice note, 03444991000. Who would you prefer as PM as a non-Labour voter? And what are you making of the digital ID inclusion in the King's Speech?
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon and welcome back to the home of common sense. So much to get through. We are, of course, responding to the King's speech. Well, kind of the King's speech and the backdrop that it was set against. This marked, of course, the 2026 state opening of Parliament, the start of a new session. Bills included digital ID, closer ties with the EU and even peerages. Watch out, Peter Mandelson. Now, at the same time, shortly before this happened, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, was seen over there at Downing Street for a meeting that lasted about 16 minutes. I can't imagine that anything particularly positive came out of that if you're Keir Starmer. It looks as if, depending on who you speak with, there will be a challenge as early as tomorrow from the Health Secretary. Watch this space and grab the popcorn. And Goldman Sachs is warning that unrest over Keir Starmer's leadership could cost Rachel Reeves £12 billion in public finances. This is the Wall Street Bank stating that the sharp rise in government borrowing costs will reduce the Chancellor's fiscal headroom to balance national accounts. So much to get through at this end. 0344 499 1000. Charlotte says, I think Wes should be PM. I like his confidence. He doesn't look like he's going to take any rubbish, and we need someone like that. This in from Phil. It says, the only way to save the Labour Party is to bring back Tony Blair. That might be true. There's been some interesting leaders of Labour over the years. How is Starmer faring compared to some of his predecessors? In a moment, David Maddox, political editor at The Independent, joins us. Always good to chat with David. First, Cole Murphy, Labour historian, is with us. Cole, good afternoon to you. It's interesting. As you do when these stories are around, you do a little bit of a deep dive, bit of a rabbit hole number on Labour leaders. This is your territory, your bread and butter. There's nothing I can tell you. But I did think that Keir Starmer can at least hold his head up high, that there's quite a few previous Labour leaders, not necessarily prime ministers, that didn't last as long as Keir Starmer.
Yeah, it would be interesting to compare Starmer back to previous leaders. Before he became Prime Minister, he was trying to compare himself to Harold Wilson, actually. Yeah. The idea that he wasn't necessarily the strongest personality in the room, but he would kind of hold court between strong personalities and therefore deftly balance them and somehow survive in office. It hasn't quite worked out like that, though, has it, based on the available evidence?
Indeed. I mean, I mentioned Labour leaders, of course. There's a difference between being a leader and being a Prime Minister. In terms of Labour Prime Ministers, if Keir Starmer was to be gone in the next couple of months, that probably does put him top of the league, doesn't it, as shortest serving Labour PM, or is there someone else that did less?
Yeah, it would. I mean, you'd have to count how many days Callaghan was in, but I think Callaghan was in 75 to 9, and MacDonald was in 24 and 29 to 31 before national government. So yes, I think so. He would be the shortest serving. No, Brown perhaps. Brown came in. No, Brown would be 3 years. So I think you're right.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's hard to keep up, really, isn't it? Because if you include the Tory leaders as well, I mean, we've had this proliferation of people who've done very short stints. Obviously, Liz Truss takes the gold, but people who've done, remarkably short periods of time set against what we normally expect. Somebody mentioned earlier, David Cameron is our longest-serving Prime Minister since Tony Blair, which is extraordinary because we tend to sort of faded that era out of our recent thinking, and it's not an impactful part in many respects of our history.
But it's also revealing, right? So I believe that there are many deeper currents leading to instability in British politics. I don't think that takes away from Keir Starmer's personal failings as Prime Minister. Mm-hmm. There are flaws in his actions as a politician, which means he's not been able to succeed as a governor. But there are clearly other things going on. As you say, both parties have been cycling through Prime Ministers at increasingly rapid speed, which tells you there's something structural. And it's revealing that it's Cameron who was the last person to be in for a significant period of time, because what did he resign over? Brexit.
Yeah.
We're dealing with the the long fallout of the 2008 financial crisis, going way back. We're dealing with the pandemic and other shocks like the war in the Middle East, the war in Ukraine, which are hitting the cost of living. All of this makes people impatient. But we're also dealing with the destabilization of our party politics. People have switched parties, they're more volatile and fragmented. And that's not unrelated to the traumatic time in British politics during the Brexit years, on both right and left, I think. So I don't think it's a coincidence that the last Prime Minister who's been relatively stable from 2010 to 2016 was David Cameron.
Yeah, and that was a coalition, of course, which may have some, possibly, that was also a fixed-term parliament, wasn't it? So arguably there's a consideration there. I think what is interesting, there was a comment, I don't usually quote Alistair Campbell as the only face of authentic Labour commentary, but I think he was, on his podcast, he made a wider point, Colm, quite recently when he talked about the UK being impossible to govern. And I'm just thinking about what you were just talking about and how divisive things are. I think he threw in social media, in his words, a toxic press, Fleet Street and the like, that it is now almost impossible because of the polarity, the crass polarity that sets the tone for everything, that you just can't make your way through the fog as a leader with any level of certainty or success.
I think it's certainly harder than when Alistair Campbell was at the heart of power. It might surprise readers of the Campbell diaries, which are full of chaos and crises and recriminations. You wouldn't know this, but if you take a step back, in the 2000s, these were the nice decades, right? A period of low inflation, higher growth, and that gives you resources to play with. This is the era when the NHS had record investment, when education was invested in quite a lot as well. The resources were there to do that. We're not in that era now, which makes everything harder. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's more difficult. I think Alistair and others are right in that front, but I don't think it's impossible. But it requires a more hard-edged and coherent political strategy and a willingness to make enemies. Now, this might surprise some of your listeners. I'm sure this is talk, so I'm sure there are many people who don't like Keir Starmer sitting right now. Maybe I'm making assumptions, but that might surprise listeners. But if you think about this government strategy, they've been trying to both appeal to the right and to the left, right? In economic policy, they've been doing pro-worker stuff. Also, the Renters' Rights Act, very much pro-renters. So their more traditional constituency in the 2000s, so in the cities, the economically precarious, the young. But they've also been trying to appeal to reform-curious voters with a relatively, I would call it, authoritarian immigration policy. I'm sure your viewers would have the thoughts on that. And the thing is, they've alienated both, right? They've not wanted reform voters, and I don't think that would have surprised my political science colleagues, whereas they've not talked as much about their attempts to appeal to voters who might be more naturally inclined to Labour. So that implies that while it's more difficult to govern, a more hard-edged and coherent strategy, which I don't think is simple as left or right, but one that's very clear-eyed about where you think you can make gains with voters who are not automatically with you and where you need to consolidate, would be more successful than the one we've seen anyway.
I wonder as well, I mean, the job of being Prime Minister has changed significantly, and the additional boxes you've got to tick in the world we currently live in, how you look, how you sound, all the rest of it. There's always the sort of apocryphal comparison of the Nixon and JFK interview, how it fared differently on radio to it did with TV. JFK winning with TV audiences. Nixon apparently, I never know whether this is an urban myth, by the way, but it's often said, Nixon did very well with radio audiences. So what you look at, so even back then there was a consideration, but I would suggest, Colm, that that has become much more urgent for prime ministers. And I sense Boris Johnson had a bit of an X factor, even if he was a nut job. There was something going on there. Farage has it. Jeremy Corbyn actually had it, curiously, I've always thought. There's a curious synergy between Corbyn and Farage, but that's a whole other debate. But Starmer doesn't really have that. He doesn't have an X factor. He's, for a guy that was a lawyer addressing juries all of his life and standing there in a wig in a courtroom defending people with a convincing argument, you might think he'd be better than he is. But oratory isn't his greatest skill. He looks a little bit awkward. He wears a nice suit. He's got good hair, and all the rest of it. But there's something lacking there that is, rightly or wrongly, quite important in the modern age. Is that fair?
The great political theorist, the German one from 100 to 150 years ago, Max Weber, came up with the concept of charisma, which we now use in everyday speech. But charisma is incredibly important in modern bureaucratic politics, as it allows the leader to cut through the grind and appeal to a constituency, particularly in democratic politics. And by that academic definition, it's no judgment on his personal character, but by that academic definition, Keir Starmer clearly does not have charisma, right? He wasn't able to make that kind of appeal. As well as that, I think it relates to my previous point about coherent strategy, because what flows from that is an argument. The government needs to make an argument in order to at least define the political weather, and it might infuriate people, it might win people over, but they need to make arguments for their policies. And they've struggled to do that. They've struggled to do that because aspects of the policy agenda point in different directions, and they try and you talk about the media environment, they still live in the kind of 1990s world where you do a piece in The Sun that emphasized one aspect, like the crime agenda, and then a piece in The Guardian that talks about the nice liberal things with the Constitution. Which is what New Labour would do. We're not in that world anymore. We're in a hyper-connected social media world where something you say to one audience will be seen very easily by another audience in our highly connected and circulated media environment. So they haven't really adjusted to that. And I think it does imply more coherence and more willingness to make enemies.
Yeah, it's a great point. Cole, lovely to have you on with us. Nice to speak. We could speak for a lot longer on this. It's fascinating stuff. Cole Murphy, the Labour historian, with us on the programme. Let's speak with David Maddox, political editor at The Independent. David, good to have you with us. I mean, we can sort of theorise and intellectualise all this business of what goes on, the history of Labour leaders. Right now, Keir Starmer isn't thinking anything about Keir Hardie, that's for sure. He's thinking, can I survive the next 24 hours?
Well, I mean, history is history to a certain degree. It's what's happening now and in the present. And now we're all waiting for the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, to resign. Probably tomorrow by the sounds of it, and that's at least what his allies are telling us, and effectively kickstart a Labour leadership contest. It won't stop with him though. We expect Angela Rayner to jump in, and possibly Ed Miliband as well, from what their allies are saying. And that is it then, isn't it, for Keir Starmer? I mean, there's no way back, unless, of course, he does what others had done, Thatcher, Major and the like, and stuck his own, keeps his own name in there and wins. I mean, I suppose there's always that possibility. I mean, under the rules, he's entitled to, and he's entitled to fight out. I mean, he faces a potential humiliation, though, if he fights and loses. I mean, but, one thing that Labour MPs have been saying to me just today and yesterday and, all week really, is just how shocked they are at how stubborn he is and how determined he is to hold on despite, almost 100 of his MPs now saying they don't have confidence in him, and, the dreadful election results last week, everything's gone right. It is so over for him. I mean, the man cannot even sack somebody who's basically told the world that he's going to resign from his government. I mean, you'd have thought if he had any authority, any strength now, he would say, Wes Streeting, sorry, mate, you're out.
I mean, it's very odd. Not only that, his spokesman has said the Prime Minister has confidence in Wes Streeting in the last couple of hours.
Full confidence.
What's all that about? Where does that come from?
It is just bizarre. I mean, I don't know if there's some kind of weird overthinking here of, let's dare Wes to resign and, just have it all on him. I mean, he should just sack him. He almost sacked him last December for exactly the same sort of reason, because Wes Streeting was manoeuvring for his job.
Sure.
And apparently planning a coup. I mean, he denies that, of course, I should add. But it's like, I mean, I think we were the first to report on Monday that the Wes Streeting challenge was on. It was his people who were calling for the Prime Minister to go. The coup was effectively on from then. It's partly Wes Streeting's own kind of backbone and bottle that's delayed it ever since. But we've got to a point now where he's clearly going to do it, and the Prime Minister wants to hold on. Well, the Prime Minister needs to show that, he's strong enough and can fight this man.
Well, indeed, you would think so. Maybe we will hear some of that from the Prime Minister tomorrow if Streeting does make this this worst kept secret slightly more public. In terms of where Streeting can go with this, because what I do find curious with respect to Wes and I suppose others, but it's Wes that's at the centre of this at the moment, is that if you crunch the numbers, Wes Streeting probably can't win. I mean, he might, but he probably can't, given the divisions within the party itself. So why would he put himself into that bear pit if the numbers suggest he can't possibly win?
Well, I think he believes he can. He has a lot of support in the parliamentary party. He's very much been the candidate of the right of the party for quite some time now. I mean, his problem is that Labour is largely soft left in its membership, and the unions don't like him. And, you know, if he has any kind of left-wing challenger, whether it's Ed Miliband, Angela Rayner, or even by some miracle Andy Burnham gets back, although I think we can discount that for now, you know, then yes, he would struggle. I mean, I was told a month ago that Keir Starmer was actually looking at a reshuffle and sacking him anyway, because he thought that if Wes Streeting stood against him just alone, then, you know, he could beat him in a head-to-head. But I don't know. I mean, Wes has this kind of sense of destiny about him, this kind of belief that he's almost, you know, the Tony Blair of his era, and it's just waiting for it to happen, you know.
Well, I mean, the constituents in his own constituency weren't quite as convinced, because he sits there on a wafer-thin majority, doesn't he?
Although, in fairness to him, and this was really, I think, quite an important part of a development last week, in that bloodbath for Labour, the Labour vote held up very well in Redbridge, including his own constituency. He saw off the Greens, kind of weird Gaza independence and all that. So he, at least from last Thursday, had a kind of, well, I've learnt the lesson. I've shown how we can take on these people in our backyards. I don't think it's going to be. I mean, I don't see him succeeding in his hopes to become Labour leader and Prime Minister, but you know, you can't write it off.
Based on what we've seen, David, and would it be fair to say, before we get into just the players and who's likely to, but by the end of the week at least, have their name up there, is it fair to say that it was the Mandelson saga? You were absolutely pivotal to this, of course, and the revelations and some great scoops and top journalism on your part, as I've said to you before. Was it that was the tipping point for stuff? I mean, we can point to lots of things. If the barometer is ineptitude, then there's quite a lot of markers on it. But Mandelson, is that the tipping point, or was that the tipping point?
I think it was in the end. I mean, it's so hard to say, because he's been so unpopular for almost the entirety of his government. I think, you know, losing his authority with the welfare rebellion last year kind of really set him on the track to effectively losing his job and being ousted. But I think the Mandelson stuff has been so bad. And you know, there are still serious question marks over over his integrity and whether he's told the truth on this. He hasn't got through that even yet, let alone the incredibly poor judgment of appointing that man to such an important diplomatic role. When, you know, as I've said before, I mean, my revelation was about Mandelson failing with security vetting.
Yeah.
You did not need the security vetting to know this was the wrong appointment.
Of course.
All you needed was a Google search.
Yeah,
and that was it, you know.
But the security vetting threw up again, didn't it? The ridiculousness of the initial appointment. So let's say end of week, David, we are there with Wes Streeting, Ed Miliband, Angela Rayner. There may be another one or two, but of those three, who becomes the next Labour leader? And including Keir Starmer in there.
I would still suggest that Angela Rayner. I know she hasn't cleared her tax issues yet, but I think she's got the wider support amongst members and the trade unions. She's certainly been making an interesting pitch policy-wise since she was forced to leave her job. I would put Ed Miliband second on that. He's very popular with it. His biggest question is whether he gets the 80-odd MPs to nominate him. But he's very popular amongst members. not so much in the country, but we have to remember that the electorate here is the Labour Party, not the wider country. If it was a wider country, it would be Wes Streeting, who's a much better candidate.
Interesting. David, we'll speak again, but always great to have you on. Thank you, David Maddox. He is, of course, political editor over there at The Independent. He's done some cracking. I mean, the Mandelson stuff was brilliant, and that did, quite rightly, but extraordinary, really, that it reopened the initial decision of Keir Starmer to appoint him. It just refueled the ludicrousness of that decision, and did so in highlighted pen, in neon lights, and in front page terms in size 58 font. So that was the area that David was reporting on. And then, of course, since then it's been this kind of trickle, and now it's like a big boulder down the hill, and it looks as if tomorrow, I mean, it's been strange, this story. Who knows? Tomorrow maybe Streeting will just go, nah, don't want to do it. I've got the numbers to do it, but I don't think I've got the numbers to win it. Then you end up with Angela Rayner. Now, Angela Rayner, we mentioned charisma with Col Murphy, our historian guest. Love her or hate her, she will, oddly, I mean, I think she could jump on a whole load of landmines as she goes through her prime ministerial career, if she gets it. But there would be something about her. People would look at her. It's funny with these jobs. You end up projecting something onto somebody once they have the job. I've said this forever about Gordon Brown. Not that I thought he was a great prime minister, but he looked more prime ministerial the day after he became prime minister. It's just naturally what we all do. And I think Rayner could have almost a Boris Johnson-esqueness for different reasons, but for the same upshot, in that it'll be colourful. That's maybe the way to look at it, and that will mark her out. And some people will loathe it, but others, perhaps even people who wouldn't normally gravitate to Labour, might also love it. We're living in really strange times on how people make up their minds. 0344 499 1000. Right back with you on the phones, coming next on Talk.
The world is on fire. Russia, Iran, China, conflicts brewing in all of their different regions. They're not waiting. But here in Britain, our armed forces are underfunded, they're undermanned, and they're underprepared. And nobody in government wants to talk about it. Well, we do. I'm Philip Ingram, and I spent my career in the world of intelligence, military planning, strategic planning, and unfortunately, conflict. This is Talk War, and this is where we analyse the conflicts shaping our world.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I think, stands to be corrected, the shortest Labour leader, although he was acting leader, was Herbert Morrison. And I've got a feeling, Finn can check this bit out, that is Herbert Morrison Peter Mandelson's grandfather. I'm pretty sure that's good. I'm sure he was like the mayor of Hackney or something like that. He lasted 7 days as Labour leader. And his career is obviously quite similar to his grandson in that respect. In fairness, he was an acting leader. He wasn't like there officially. So the 7-day thing's probably a bit of a mischievous red herring on my part, but worth raising. This is Joel down in London. Joel, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Hi, Ian. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Fire away.
Yeah, so you asked about which PM non-Labour voters would want.
Yeah.
So clearly, you know, the standard is low, but I actually think that perversely, Angela Rayner would be better for the country because what we badly have lacked, what's really marked Starmer out from the rest of them, is that he actually has given the impression, for I think the first time of any Prime Minister, of not actually putting the British people first, or even the United Kingdom's interests first. He has genuinely put the interests of, you know, international law, so-called international law, and you know, the so-called human rights. He's put that first in the forefront of his mind. And I think that's what's caused this sort of complete collapse of cultural confidence in this country, which has in turn contributed to the economic doldrums that we continue to find ourselves in.
I wonder where do you think that comes from, Joel? I mean, maybe there is no one answer. This sort of... Starmer gravitates instinctively to the global stage. It almost defers to it as a kind of superior notion that the global collective will fare better. Now, you could argue this is kind of perfect socialism on a grander scale in some respects. The overarching collective will do better than the individual in terms of making decisions. Is it that? What do you think happens there?
Yeah, well, no, I think it's a combination of his extreme arrogance and the sort of human rights lawyer industry that has developed in this country, which has made people very rich on the backs of, frankly, undermining and destroying the institutions of this country that have made it great in the past. So, and I think that is what's really crystallised this enormous loathing and an anger that people feel towards Starmer and his like and Herman. The fact that that their first instinct, I feel, on every issue, is to sort of question somehow if the UK has done something wrong and is on the wrong side. And for a Prime Minister, that is an absolutely appalling position to be in on every issue. You know, of course. Yeah.
What about? I mean, so if Angela Rayner, so you think Angela Rayner would be better than Starmer, but from what perspective? Better as in she'd make a greater impact, she's a bit louder and she's more colourful, or better because she's philosophically driven by some incredible underpinning ideology that we've yet to excavate and expose?
No, I do not think she would be a good Prime Minister. I just think you asked who non-Labour voters would prefer. Yeah. And I just think in her heart, at least, however misguided it might be, her first instinct is probably to do what she feels is best for the British people, first, at least. And she would be able to, you know, ignore or these sort of notions of human rights law coming first and of international law coming first. Yeah. I don't think it would enter her head first. I'm not saying she would be good in any way, but I'm just trying to analyse what exactly it is about Starmer that's made him so loathed in the country.
It's interesting because it's not a view I previously had of Starmer when he was leader of the opposition, and he did that for a few years. I didn't think he was anything great. I used to think he looks pretty good. He had an open goal with the various Tory leaders that were there at the time. All the things I think of him now, I don't remember, if I'm brutally honest, having those thoughts then. But then he wasn't Prime Minister, so that's arguably the only difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, what Prime Minister chooses to persecute British troops? I mean, he chose to take on cases and create new case law that's...
Yeah, well, that's, as you say, that the human rights lawyer, you know, that's... I think, wasn't there a quote that he said, I'll be, you know, human rights lawyer till the day I die or something? That was, I'm slightly misquoting, but it was in that...
Exactly. But this whole notion, you know, Gus O'Donnell said it in the civil service, that his first priority is the global welfare, not British welfare. And that sort of mindset, which Starmer is very, very comfortable in, I think is what's caused this absolute economic...
I think so. And, of course, all these people, even though we don't hear so much about it, you know, Starmer for the last decade, before he became Prime Minister, has spent probably every other week on some kind of international trip somewhere, going to meet the committee of this or the organisation of that or the united conglomerate of X, Y and Z. He's, you know, that's in his blood. They see the world in that way. I wonder with Rayner, however, Joel, there might be a problem here because... The other area of concern I sense is that I think people don't do as in the electorate, don't do politics as much as they used to. I think they do perceptions and personalities above policy. And Rayner, as I mentioned earlier, I likened her to Boris Johnson in one sense. She would be colourful. And as long as she doesn't trip over too many political landmines, she could curiously get people on her side that would never have thought of voting for them before. That kind of like, well, I don't know much about her, but quite like that Angela Rayner.
Sure, and absolutely, as opposed to, you know, spending... I mean, every time I even see Starmer on the TV now, I feel depressed, or when I hear him, I feel depressed. But, you know, at least, yes, Angela Rayner may have some of that charisma that your previous guest has talked about. Again, I do not think she would be a good Prime Minister, but of the options there, I just feel that, yeah.
I think so, and I do wonder whether the kind of charisma is the wrong word for Angela Rayner, but we take the point. I wonder whether that does, you know, go ahead of you in terms of policy, which is curious. Listen, Joel, fabulous call, lovely to speak. Let's do it again. Joel down in London, 0344 499 1000. We're going to chat to the economist Liam Hannigan in just a second about the blow to public finances with all that is going on. Details coming next here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Ian says, the problem I have with Angela Rayner is that every time she mentions ethics, I think she's talking about the county. Full house points to Ian. So what's going on in terms of the economics of everything that is happening right now? I mean, you can't have that amount of disruption occurring in Westminster without there being some kind of knock-on effect in the old fiscal department. We know that Goldman Sachs has warned that the leadership crisis surrounding Starmer could cost Rachel Reeves £12 billion as rising government borrowing costs reduce the Chancellor's fiscal headroom for balancing the nation's accounts. Let's have a reminder of the Chancellor speaking just last year.
Today, 1 in every £10 of taxpayers' money is spent on debt interest. Not paying that debt down, but just paying the interest to our creditors. At the budget last year, I changed the fiscal rules to strike a careful balance, to invest more in capital alongside a credible plan to grow our economy and bring debt down within this Parliament.
Yeah, there's a borrowing problem. Let's speak with Liam Halligan, the economist. Liam, always good to see you. Is it getting worse then? I mean, when you just heard Rachel Reeves speaking there about how much is being spent in this area, what's the direction of travel based on where we are at the moment?
Good to be with you, Ian. The direction of travel, I'm afraid, is as it has been for the last year to 18 months, but it's getting worse. So the government obviously borrows money. It borrows money off big global investors, pension funds, insurance companies, and so on. And last year we borrowed £132 billion, a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And 110 billion of that money that we borrowed last year went on debt service. So not paying the debt back, but actually just paying the interest on the debt. And our interest bill as a government is determined by what you call the gilt yield. It's how much the market charges the government to borrow over 10 years or over 30 years. And our gilt yields, GILT, it's called gilt-edged because the UK government's IOUs literally used to be embossed with gold back in the day. They were as good as gold. That was where the phrase came from.
Oh, there you go.
The gilt yield is now well above 5%. That's easily the highest of any major economy in the world. We're paying a lot more to borrow than the French, the Germans, than the Greeks, than the Moroccans, believe it or not, with respect to my Moroccan friends. And the reason we're paying so much to borrow, there are various reasons. One is we've got a big inflation problem. So when people lend money to us as a government, they want compensation for that inflation. Another reason is because we're a major net energy importer and food importer, and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and what's happening in the Middle East and the Persian Gulf hits Britain harder than almost any other major economy. But another big reason, and this has been the case for the last 12 to 18 months, is that Labour is spending and borrowing far too much money.
Yeah.
And now Starmer is on the ropes after Labour were hammered, obviously, last Thursday in the local elections. The markets are concerned that anyone that comes in, be it Andy Burnham, be it Wes Streeting, they will either be a lot more left-wing than Starmer, or will have to do a deal with the left, and we'll end up with policies that are a lot more left-wing than Starmer. Yeah. So more borrowing, more spending, more high taxation, which will squeeze growth, make the public finances even worse. And look, I've been saying this for well over a year. I'm like a sandwich board man, right? But I don't apologize because I'm right. And now this is dominating the mainstream news. It should have been massive in the news for frankly, months and months, because there's nothing progressive, Ian, about spending, the same as you spend on education on debt service, right? Not paying the debt back.
Of course.
There's nothing progressive or clever about paying twice as much on debt interest a year as you spend on defense. There's nothing progressive about driving the economy over a cliff so you have a bond market meltdown, inflation goes to the moon, sterling plunges, it's the poor that suffers most in those meltdowns. And Labour they had a terrible inheritance from the Tories. They inherited a load of debt from the Tories. Yes, they did, but they've made a bad situation worse. And if they do drive the economy over a cliff and there's a bond market meltdown, I suspect the Labour Party will never be forgiven.
Yeah, I agree. And what I can never work out, Liam, and who knows what, look, people have different political views. That's fantastic. We live in a democracy, but there are certain irredeemables. There's certain moments and facts as distinct from opinions out there. You just stated some obvious ones. What is it then about somebody who sings, and I don't want this to make it, to be just a kind of obvious cheap trouncing of socialists or people whose politics are on the left, but if Jeremy Corbyn was standing here, he would say we need to put more money into this, more money into that, more money into this, and many people around him with similar politics would say the same thing. There's lots of people. Angela Rayner would probably say the same thing. What you've just said is not up for debate. They're just basic facts of economics. Some would even say sixth form economics could work that out. If you haven't learnt it by that stage, you're in the wrong class, etc. So what happens to a left-wing thinker when they're faced with those irredeemable facts, and yet they will still say, no, we're going to plough more money into X, Y and Z?
they're determined to not understand reality, because realities get in the way of their ideology and their sense that they have a monopoly on virtue and it's the right thing to do. I mean, listening to some, I'm afraid, Labour MPs this lunchtime, what they're saying is completely infantile. And, you know, I don't care where you're from, what class you are, where you did or didn't go to university. I don't care about any of those things. But anyone who's paid by the public purse to be an MP can crack open a book or pick up a phone and understand the basics of finance. And the basis of finance, when clever people go on the telly and say, well, if we have to do what the bond market wants, then MPs should just go home. That's not right. We've got to do the right thing. We've got to tell the bond markets what to do. That is literally like a sailor complaining about the sea.
Yeah.
It's completely mad. We are in this situation because we've borrowed so much money. And when you've borrowed so much money, you lose your freedom, you lose your room for maneuver.
Of course.
Yeah. If the markets, if the pension funds, the insurance companies, who, by the way, have a legal obligation to, get decent returns for their policyholders, who are ordinary people with pension plans, insurance plans, whatever. If they feel that if they're so worried about the way the British government is being managed, that they are demanding higher rates of interest to lend to the British government, because they don't believe the British government when it says we're going to tax our way to growth. That's literally what some people in the Labour Party are saying, against all historic evidence. They don't believe the British government when they say, oh, we're just going to spend all this money on breakfast clubs, but don't worry, there'll be welfare reforms down the line and we'll rein in the rate of increase of government spending. They don't believe them anymore. And if these guys keep pushing up the rate at which the British government has to pay to borrow, then it will literally jeopardize the state's ability to pay pensions, to pay benefits, to fund hospitals. I don't want to be a sandwich board man, but in the end, the political and media class have to start listening to people who actually know what they're talking about.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? And is there... Look, I know turning things around in politics for many reasons, but fundamentally, economically, Liam, it can be like turning around an oil tanker. I mean, I get that, but is there a sort of, I wouldn't say one size fits all, is there a go-to example of something that, whether this was Tory or Labour, you must sit there as an economist and sometimes pull your hair out and thinking, just do this, because at least it would be the start of something. Is there a... And I wouldn't ask you to explain the full extent of what it would look like, but is there a sort of an immediate point that you could reach for where we could tangibly see and perhaps even feel the efforts of changing our economic direction?
Well, government ministers and MPs supporting the government, Labour MPs, they constantly say, oh, borrowing costs are going up everywhere in the world. And it's true. There is more inflation in the world than we thought there would be, and that's pushing up borrowing costs. But guess what? Since Labour took over in July 2024, borrowing costs in the UK have gone up far more than any other major economy. And borrowing costs in Italy, actually, not known as a paragon of fiscal virtue over the years, have actually gone down, because the Italians under Meloni whisper it. Obviously, a lot of progressive people don't like her, but she's actually got hold of the public finances, and Italy's borrowing costs now are below where they were in July 2024, even though global inflation is higher, oil prices are higher, and all those things, because they've actually taken control of their public finances. The Greeks have taken control of their public finances, and their borrowing costs are lower. And, but unfortunately...
Look where they were a few years ago.
Yeah, Greece almost crashed out the euro because its borrowing costs are spiraling out of control. And those of us who told us that the euro would never collapse, that you couldn't leave the euro, were obviously talking nonsense. They obviously haven't studied any history. Latin American currency union of the 19th century, anybody? The German Zollverein, anybody? I mean, come on, these historic examples are there. But the situation now is that, in Greece and Italy, they've both got their borrowing costs down. They've both got their public finances more under control. But they both had to, their governments were both taken over by the International Monetary Fund.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Irish government was taken over by what's called the Troika, obviously a place close to my heart. You know, of the IMF and the European Central Bank and the European Commission, completely anti-democratically taken over, and blokes with thick glasses and laptops telling ministers you have to do this or we're not going to lend you this money. Is that where Britain's going? I mean, this happened 50 years ago in Britain. We had to get the IMF in for a bailout in 1976. And I talk to MPs and I say, I don't think it's 1997, I think it's 1976. And they blink at me and they say, what happened in 1976? And I say, well, Southampton won the cup. They beat Man United.
It was a hot summer.
It was an IMF bailout.
Really? These are our political representatives. On that point, Liam,
it's not all of them. There are many people in Parliament, in my experience, I must say, who are serious economic thinkers.
Yep.
There aren't many. There aren't lots and lots of them, but over the years there have been some, and they need to come to the fore, and they need to start. It doesn't make you popular saying this stuff. It's a lot nicer to say, "Oh, let's spend loads of money and be happy."
Yeah.
But we are now at the point where the rubber's hitting the road, and people of authority and experience need to start speaking up within the Labour Party and beyond the Labour Party.
Just two very quick points, Liam, because I know you have to rush as well. Does that mean, let's not dwell on this because it's not relevant to the current events, but just out of interest, did Liz Truss have it slightly right then, looking back at it?
That's a really complicated question. I can't do that one in 20 seconds, Ian. All I would say is that borrowing costs now are far higher than they were under Liz Truss, right? And they have been for most of the last year. Where has the media outcry been?
Yeah, that's a great point. And finally, then, we've got a few contenders up there at the moment, it seems. Should Keir Starmer have to, accept his inevitable fate, West Streeting, not so much on manoeuvres, but just picking his shoes for what he's going to wear tomorrow morning when he announces his resignation as health secretary. That will inevitably mean Ed Miliband pitches up as well. Angela Rayner will be there. Might be a couple of other outriders into the bag as well. Of any of those names, as an economist from that financial perspective, is there anyone there that gives you a scintilla of hope?
Well, I know all these people. I've followed them closely over the years, talked to them many times. Wes is definitely, quotes, to the right of Keir Starmer. He's much more of a Blairite. That may stop him becoming leader because he was close to Peter Mandelson and all the rest of it. He's much more sensible economically than, say, with respect, Angela Rayner. I mean, Angela Rayner is a sort of bond market denialist. Let's just do the right thing. They won't mind if we spend the money on breakfast clubs. They will mind. They don't give a monkeys what you spend it on. Yep. They're worried that you're borrowing more money when clearly you're already spending most of the money you're borrowing servicing your pre-existing debt. That's what the markets are worried about. But even Wes, right, the only way he's going to do a deal, he's going to become leader, is if he does a deal with the left.
Yeah.
And the left are the insurgents. They've taken completely the wrong message from these pulverizing elections, haven't they? Oh, the Green Party have done well. Let's follow the Green Party down a left-wing rabbit hole. Well, actually, Reform did a lot better than the Greens, and the Greens didn't do as well as many people expected.
That's true.
Nigel Farage's party is now, very powerful in local government. He is odds on to be the next Prime Minister. Say the Labour Party, let's rejoin the EU or almost rejoin the EU. I mean, totally tin-eared. But as Trevor Phillips said, a fantastic broadcaster, I think, Trevor Phillips, obviously a man of the left, very close to the Labour Party over the years, now broadcasts on Sky, sorry to mention.
Right.
But as he says, and he really knows the Labour Party from the inside, I mean, he says, the Labour Party, the activist base, the MPs, they always seem to want exactly what the public doesn't want. So they want Ed Miliband to be their leader. The public thinks Ed Miliband's crazy in many cases. The only Labour MP minister who I think would make a worthy Prime Minister is Shabana Mahmood. I think she's a very impressive politician, the way she's spoken out about a number of issues, obviously a grown-up. And, of course, Labour activists think she's hideous.
She's an extremist. Yeah, she might as well be in Reform UK as their kind of line, which is bizarre.
Actually, her views are very, very, very mainstream. And the fact that she's obviously a proud Muslim woman purporting those views is an extremely valuable thing in this country at the moment as we try and steer our way out of the big increases in immigration that have put a lot of people's noses out of joint. That is just the truth of it.
Listen, of all the chaos that's going on, Liam, of all the areas that are falling apart, the kind of that scene from Carry On Up the Khyber at the very end when it's all crashing down on them, we take one crumb of comfort, and that is that Zach Polanski is still not even an MP. So we should sleep. We should sleep nicely with that final thought. Liam, great to see you again. Thank you, Liam Hannigan. Always fabulous to have him on. Such insightful stuff. He's an economist. He's a welcome guest on the programme anytime. And of course, over to you. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note on Labour leadership. This comes from Helen in Knutsford.
I just wanted to say a bit about charisma, as you've mentioned it. You've got it. I've got it, if I may say so. I'm a singer and entertainer. I know how to work a crowd. I know how to keep people interested, But Angela Rayner, she doesn't have it. Trump's got it. Boris has got it. Angela Rayner hasn't got it. You've got to be able to keep people's interest. She won't be able to keep the interest. She hasn't got the je ne sais quoi. She hasn't got the flair. She hasn't got the oomph. And you've got to have all of that to be a prime minister. And we know this because Keir doesn't have it. And that doesn't work.
She's got a loud voice. She likes a pint and a cig, although I think she's given up the cigs and now given up the vapes, apparently. Not that I think the last time I looked, that should not be criteria. When you go to the voting booths, you don't tend to go, do they smoke? No, really? Perish the thought. You understand where I'm coming from on this. 0344 499 1000. We've got a brand new Voice of Doom on the way. So many comments from you coming in as well. This is Talk.
The offer to be the voice of a sheep.
Yes, you can only dream, really.
Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser. Well, how much of Rip does your husband in real life have about him?
He's a man. He's due.
Kirsty and Phil.
Can we talk about one other thing?
We can talk about loads of things. It's an interview.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up to 3 o'clock, we've got the Voice of Doom. Don't go away, Jill, with you in a second. Voice of Doom, brand new mystery voice. It's always political. One simple question. Who is this?
The rules were changed on Monday.
Oh, that's interesting. I think I recognise it. Let's hear it again.
The rules were changed on Monday.
Who is that? Left wing, right wing, young, old, dead or alive? If you can identify that voice, only one way to have a crack at this. 87222. That's 87222. If you know who this is.
The rules were changed on Monday.
If we get a right answer, all will be revealed after the headlines at 3 o'clock. If not, it rolls over to tomorrow. One more time.
The rules were changed on Monday.
87222. Hello, Jill in Cornwall.
Hello, Ian. How
Hi.
are you?
I'm very good, thank you. What have you got for us?
Good that I'm tagged onto the Voice of Doom.
Indeed. You're the voice of joy, Jill. It's as simple as that.
Oh, dear. You said about who might be a leader for the Labour Party. I can't think of anyone within the Labour Party that I would actually select. I'm sorry, but the principles of, if you want to call it that, but what this party is actually planning to do, it doesn't matter who it is, I just don't agree with so many of the things.
Yeah.
And I just feel that whoever steps into his shoes is not going to make any difference to this country, because we're still on the same flight path for wherever we're going that he's already planned. I'm sorry, Angela Rayner, unfortunately, I mean, she's a criminal as far as I'm concerned. I mean, she may have...
You mean criminal because of her tax?
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry.
By the way, Jill, how long does it take HMRC to sort it? Couldn't you just do that in a meeting in about half an hour? Did she break the rules, yes or no? End of.
Well,
it's been going on for months, this thing.
I know, but the fact that she did this makes me question her views on what she would expect from this country. I don't know that I would trust her, and at the moment there is no one that's coming forward that isn't questionable as to their the type of person that they are. And I think that where we're going with this particular party is dreadful. I now hear that the farmers are being stunned again with things that they can't do when they're already struggling as it is. I mean, I live in the countryside, and so I'm aware of what's happening.
Sure.
Not as much as I would like to be, but
Yeah.
I am aware.
Well, I think all of those. Stories, farmers, winter fuel allowance, everything that kind of haunted Keir Starmer when he'd only been in the job for about 5 minutes. I think it's all going to come back, Jill.
Well, I think the person who might be a good leader of this country at the moment might be you. You seem to have...
Absolutely right. You could be my running mate, Jill. We'd make a great combo, I think. Listen, I've got to run because the news is upon us. Thank you for that. Great call from Jill in Cornwall. Brummy says, if David Lammy is Deputy PM, why is he not being put into the pot? Or maybe should be put in a pot, but I don't think he's put his name into the ring, so that's why. And we've got the Voice of Doom. Who is this?
The rules were changed on Monday.
87222.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. We will continue to reflect. A couple of things we're reflecting on. The King's speech, of course, what you made of the content of that, which has sort of curiously been overshadowed by events in the same postcode just up the road in Downing Street, where we know that Health Secretary Wes Streeting had a meeting that lasted little more than a minute, 16 of them to be precise. Nipped in there this morning, came out again, smile on his face. The Prime Minister apparently has said he has full faith in Wes Streeting. Although the smart money is saying, according to the word on the street, that tomorrow morning he will announce he's resigning as Health Secretary to challenge Keir Starmer. Others will then come forth. We'll talk more about that in a few moments' time. And economically speaking, as we were chatting in the last hour, Goldman Sachs is warning that the unrest over Keir Starmer's leadership could cost Rachel Reeves £12 billion in public finances. The Wall Street Bank has stated that the sharp rise in government borrowing costs will reduce the Chancellor's fiscal headroom to balance the national accounts. We're in a difficult time. Whoever takes over that gig has got their work cut out. Goodness me. 0344 499 1000. Donny in Chelmsford says, perhaps Angela Rayner will be as authentic as the Labour leader Michael Foot. He turned up at the Cenotaph wearing a donkey jacket. The common man. Rayner is the common woman. Do you know, I'm going to say this, Don. I think the donkey jacket thing is an urban myth. I don't think he did. I think he turned up in a dark coat that was reported as being a donkey jacket and was never a donkey jacket. And now I'm saying the word donkey jacket out loud. I'm trying to remember what a flipping donkey jacket is. I think I had one as a teenager. It became a bit of a thing for a while. Nonetheless, either way, Don, donkey jacket or no donkey jacket, yes, you're right. Michael Foot, who was a very studious and bookish, clever man, who had his ideas, but he looked a bit wacky, didn't he? And I only raised that point because we're living in a world now where cosmetic politics is almost as, in fact, some would argue, more important than your policies, which puts us in a really strange place. On this point, let's speak with Lord Clive Soley, Labour peer. Clive, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. I hope I'm not looking too wacky.
No, you're always looking great. And when I say on this point, I didn't think we were going to have a whole debate about Michael Foot, by the way, but no. I don't know whether you ever knew Michael Foot.
I did indeed. Yes, he's a good man.
So I understand, but I've never met anybody who didn't say nice things about Michael Foot.
Yeah, he was a very good author too.
Yeah, and a good author as well. If people like their politics, they should check that out. But of course, he did... He was caricatured, wasn't he? And the moment that tipping point was hit, there was no real return. Yeah. I mentioned the donkey jacket, which I think is an urban myth.
Yes. I think you're right. Well, it wasn't a donkey jacket, but it looked like it.
That's exactly it. Yes.
Some of the press went to town on it because it wasn't sort of pinstripe or whatever they were supposed to wear. I don't know. It was, it wasn't helpful.
Indeed. But of course, we do live in a world where, cosmetics sort of matter now, more so than ever. We're in curious times. I mean, just give us your take as a Labour man, Clive. I'm not suggesting you feel the entire pulse of the party, but, you've been around the block, you know the terrain well. This is an uncomfortable time for Labour.
Yes, I'm not directly involved anymore because I left the House of Lords a couple of years ago and so on. But
you might lose the word. You might lose the Lord now. After the King.
I could do. Except I'm afraid I'm stuck with it. I'm stuck with it until the King takes it off me. And he hasn't threatened to do so
I think
yet.
there are others in front of you for that one.
I think there's quite a lot in front of me.
Indeed. So Labour itself, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it is a serious mess. I don't know ifs and buts about that, and it's got to be sorted. I am very worried about changing the leader right now, not least because I remember very, very clearly why the Tories got into so much trouble and changed the leader on 3 occasions, and it didn't work. Yeah. And the reason it doesn't work, and the reason it wouldn't work in this occasion, is that the problems stay the same. And that's the difficulty. Now, Keir Starmer certainly has problems in relating to people in a more positive and constructive way. He just doesn't. He's not very good at that. He has done, in my view, foreign policy pretty well, because that's been a pretty one. But yeah, there's a real problem at home here, and it was obvious in the elections. What I think is, if you change the leader now, my worry would be you'd have the same sort of problems. And because of the uncertainty now, as you just heard in news bulletins a few moments ago, there'll be more market turbulence, and you'll have the same trouble that the Tories had. They had that problem. That's why we're in this mess, actually. It takes a long time to sort it out. So whoever takes over, if anybody else does take over now, it will still be the same problems. My view is that Keir Starmer should stay. I think there's a case for saying if he doesn't turn the ship round in the next 6 to 12 months, then they ought to have an election leadership before the next election, so that you go into the election with a new leader if that was necessary. But to do it now, I think, just risks making the same mistake as the Tories. So that's where I'm at on this.
Yes,
I mean, there's 3 key points. We've got to address the price of food, we've got to address the price of energy, and we've got to address housing. Those are the 3 things which are hurting.
100%. But of course, I totally get exactly what you're saying in terms of what should happen. However, what is likely to happen is that all that goes out the window, because tomorrow West Streeting says, I'm standing. That's followed shortly afterwards by Ed Miliband saying, I'm standing, and Angela Rayner will also jump into the ring as well. And that's all likely to happen by close of play on Friday.
I hope it doesn't happen. I hope people, take a step back and think hard about this before they go down that path. But yes, it could do. If it does happen, then it needs to be done as quickly as possible. And the new person who takes over has got to be very clear about making sure the party doesn't split. Because at the moment, the splits aren't the old left-right ones. I mean, there's an element of that. But that's not the really issue. The issue is that people feel that Keir Starmer has, lost the confidence of the electorate. And that's the central problem for him at the moment. And, it's obviously true. You look at the election results and you can't say anything other than, oh, my God, what happened? So, it's tough. But politics is tough.
Indeed. Is it unfair to ask you then, Clive, if it did come to this, which of the names that we're seeing do you think would tick all of the right boxes?
Well, I would vote, as I've indicated already, for Keir to stay there, right? If Keir stood down, I think you're in a much more difficult area. Wes Streeting has got a good media presence, as you will know. He deals with the media pretty well and so on. Although I've got respect for the others, I'm not sure they, could handle it any better, really. So I don't know. I'd have to, ask me again when it happens. I hope it doesn't happen.
We will watch with interest. Clive, great to have you on. Nice to see you again. Thank you, Lord Clive Soley, Labour peer. Doesn't sit in the House of Lords, but he carries the title, of course, because that stays with you forever, even if you're kicked out of the House. I mean, you had this with Mandelson, didn't you? He's still Lord Mandelson. You can resign from the Lords, but you can't get rid of the title. Until today, when, of course, the King announced, or the government announced via the conduit of the King, that they will look at removing peerages and the like. We will see. They are debating issues around the King's speech right now in the House of Commons. That is like a day-long affair, from all the traditions, people being dragged out of the chamber or stopped from knocking doors and doors closed in their face, all of that, removing the sceptre, taking it down to what they call the other place, the House of Lords. All of that continues into a more debating format as they look at their conclusions from the King's speech. And there are a few traditional speeches that get given that often sort of vaguely amusing. Actually, it's sometimes worth being there for that. But in the face of everything else that's going on, it's not a funny place right now, is it? The House of Commons. Politics isn't that funny in this country. You can't look at people and sort of go, well, there's a bit of an upside, oh, look who's presenting. Have I got news for you this week? We're not there anymore. It's pretty grim, and we're quite divided as a people. And when we divide, we don't just say, oh, look at that person over there. They have a different view to me. There are people, mostly courtesy of social media, that want them dead. It's that place, They should be this, that. Exterminate this. It's pretty, it's grim, really. We've lost civility when it comes to the public conversation. This is Robert in Hertfordshire. What have you got for us, Robert? Hello.
Hi, Ian. Never a dull moment, eh?
Not at all, mate. Not at all.
I think I'm a bit worried about Starmer. I'm a reform voter, and I would rather he stayed in because, like Nigel said, he's the biggest vote for reform by keeping him in. I mean, but the trouble is, what I'm worried about, he's dangerous, and I'm worried that he is absolutely set on taking us back into Europe. And I feel that there's a sinister reason behind this, and I'll tell you what I think it is. I think he's got him and Macron are somehow joined at the hip, and I feel that there's some sort of paymaster behind them because Macron's very similar to Starmer in fact that he's only been hanging on. He's thrown loads of people under the bus in French politics just to keep on himself.
Yeah, I mean, he shouldn't really be there, but he's still hung on somehow.
And the thing is, this is what I think. It might be a bit far-fetched, but I feel that he's already set himself up with a job in the EU once he goes. And one of the conditions was you get the UK back into the market because we need their money. And I feel that there's a very...
Well, what kind of job could there be, though? I mean, unless someone's going to make you the president of Europe, which is not even a job you need to be elected for, what would that look like? A job for Starmer in the EU?
Well, you see, with Starmer, what he likes, he don't like doing the housework of normal politics, okay, the sweeping. He likes being a statesman. He loves it. He loves it. It's very insignificant, but he loves getting around the world. He feels that he's a statesman, but he's not. He doesn't do the bare bones of politics because he's not a politician.
Yeah.
But he's still a very, very dangerous man, and I feel he can still do us a lot of trouble, a lot of damage. What I hope is that if he does get his notice, soon, and they have a timetable for him to leave, say in a couple of months, he's not allowed to do anything significant. He's not allowed to sign up for anything significant.
It's a good point. That's a good point. That should almost be a caveat in any Prime Minister's contract that, you can't work somewhere else of significance. You can go and work in the co-op or the local library. You can do as much voluntary work as you like, but you can't take a big job at the
right.
United Nations or EU or whatever. Yeah, that would sound perfectly reasonable to me. Listen, Robert, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. What is going on? When we mention, I say this quite a lot, when I used to see Rishi Sunak, Justin Trudeau and Macron together, it was like somebody had opened a packet of them, these kind of, a sort of set style of globalist leader. And I'm not using the word globalist in that kind of vaguely conspiratorial sense. Just those that are at harmony with institutions, international institutions, over domestic ones. And that is a school of thought. There are some very powerful international committees, and some of them, I'm sure, absolutely have a place. But the sense of that area of thinking is much deeper than that. It's that we would be served best as people if we functioned almost fully on international terms. And it just appeals to many. But there are right-wing factions that are kind of switched on and enamoured by this kind of thinking as well. It's not exclusively of the left. I mentioned, Rishi Sunak looked very comfortable in that skin as well. Mark's in Glasgow. What have you got for us, Mark? Afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon. You mentioned the word globalist there, and I think in truth what's going on, no matter who replaces Starmer, if and when, he's on a mission, and I think that the problem is all of his colleagues in ministerial positions, something like 65 of them, are on the same mission, which is to drag us back into the EU, possibly into the Euro, so we are locked in there forever. We will not escape, and that's why Starmer said when he lost that first by-election about a year ago, I'm going to have to go harder and faster. That made me wonder. Then one of your colleagues, Alex, mentioned something about the Fabian Society, and I thought, well, I know the name, but I looked them up. They are international socialists who believe in a globalist elite, and that's where the globalism thing comes from. And the globalists and the political elite will basically run the planet, and that's how it's going to go. And the big issue there is there's nowhere for us to have our say. There's nowhere for us to say, no, we don't want this. We had the Brexit vote, and it's been completely ignored by this lot. They have gone hammer and tong to get us back into the EU. And I'm afraid Wes Streeting is another member of the Fabian Society, as are Rayner, Reeves, Miliband.
Aren't pretty much... I mean, is that not to underplay what you've just said there in this respect, Mark, but isn't it like an act of being a member of Equity? Nearly all MPs, Labour MPs, are members of the Fabian Society.
No, they're not. They're not. And I think that the big issue is that the ones in charge are Blair and Brown were, and Blair's the one who set all this in motion. He basically tied us into the EU by passing the various laws and ECA.
Well, you always, the other thing you do with that school of thought, as I'm sure you're aware, is that you take institutions and you sort of remove the politics from them, but you're not really removing the politics. You remove government intervention from them, and then you create a system that can't be uncreated, as it were.
Well, that's exactly what they've done. You look at our big corporations, our big banks, the Bank of England, the NHS. Yeah. But over the last 10, 15, 20 years, they've all turned into woke, ideologically based organizations. They're spending fortunes on sort of trans. The teachers at primary schools are teaching trans rather than history. They are doing exactly what the Fabian, what socialists, communists, whatever you want to call them, want you to do. Take away your national identity. And unfortunately, that also means pouring in hundreds of thousands of immigrants who have no interest in your society, no interest in your history, and just want to bring theirs and dominate it. And that's happening throughout the whole of Europe, because that's basically what's going on. You mentioned Rishi in hand with various other, Carney and all the other people, and the other leaders, Macron and so on. That's interesting, because what was said a few years ago is that Cameron wanted us back in the EU. That's why he resigned when the Brexit vote happened. But he said to various people, I'm not going to take us back in. We'll lose the election, let Labour do it. And I do believe that's why Rishi called the election when he did, because Rishi was absolutely Cameron's man.
Interesting. I love it. Mark, great call. Thank you, mate, for that. Mark in Glasgow. This comes from Frank in Bristol. It says... Ian, the problem with Michael Foot was his choice of anorak. If I remember correctly, he wore one as a leader of the opposition took the cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday. This presumably did not go down well with HRH. You might have missed the beginning, Frank, when we were talking about it. It was exactly that point that started the conversation about Michael Foot. That's the only reason he was raised, because Don in Chelmsford mentioned the donkey jacket, and I think it was just a dark jacket that kind of looked a bit like a donkey. So maybe anorak is the better way to describe it, as Frank correctly does. Mike in Lincoln says, Lord Soley is 100% correct. Even if Labour changed their leader and by default our Prime Minister, the problems his replacement faces are exactly the same. I do, however, take issue with his assertion that Starmer should remain because he simply isn't dynamic enough to deal with the nation's problems and keeps flitting off to be an irrelevance on the global stage. He just isn't up to the demands of the job, says Mike in Lincoln. There's a lot of people feeling exactly that way. John in Ashford in Kent. I've got a cousin, John, in Ashford in Kent. I wonder if it's him. Doubt it. He'll be in the slaughterhouse over Wednesday. That's what he does for a living. Sorry. Vegetarians. This one comes from John in Ashford. Different John says, my favourite photo of Angela Rayner, apart from the green trouser suit, is the one of her snuggling up to Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock. We know Starmer is a globalist, preferring Davos to Westminster, and Rayner will probably be just the same. Thank you, John, for that. More comments on the way. So much to get through. Some great calls. If you're a non-Labour voter, which I think is quite a lot of the people listening and watching this now, who would you prefer as the next Prime Minister? Which one of the group that we're kind of aware of would you think, OK, I wouldn't vote for them myself, but I'd rather it was Wes or Ed or Angela or Andy? It could be some other outriders that pitch up as well by this time tomorrow. We will watch with it. It won't be dull. I mean, if Streeting's going to do this, and many of his cohorts in the Labour Party, certainly those who sit there on the West Streeting, in the West Streeting camp, are suggesting, we understand, that tomorrow he will resign as Health Secretary in order to challenge Keir Starmer as leader. And when that happens, two obvious things happen. Other people will come forward, but the second one, more obvious, is that is literally it for Keir Starmer, unless he wins a leadership race. It did happen to Thatcher, didn't it? Thatcher won. Happened to Major as well, but you're so bloody bruised by that point. You've got almost no command or authority whatsoever. Are we doing the voice of doom now? Should we do it now? The voice of doom, the mystery voice that we played you just before the news at 3 o'clock. Let's have a listen to it.
The rules were changed on Monday.
These are some of the guesses. Rory Stewart, no. Larry Grayson, no. Keir Starmer, Peter Hegseth, no. That would be interesting. Rachel Reeves, Wes Streeting, no. Richard Burgeon, no. Gavin Williamson, no. Alex Norris, no. But we have got a winner. In fact, quite a few winners on this. But the first one that came through was Sam in Manchester, who correctly identified that it was Grant Shapps. I think Grant Shapps has possibly a record of having more cabinet posts. Liz Truss, I think, had more cabinet posts in the sort of 11 years before she became Prime Minister. She was there almost from day one of the coalition and was never out of cabinet in all that time, which is interesting. It puts her as one of the most experienced. But then Grant Shapps had he was the Home Secretary, wasn't he, for about 4.5 hours or something really weird like that. 6 days, there it was. But he had a few little portfolios. He was definitely Transport Secretary at one point. He was big on that. Maybe Defence Secretary, I'm tempted to say. Possibly did that role too. For about a year in that job. 0344 499 1000. Back to your calls coming next on Talk.
The offer to be the voice of a sheep.
Yes, you can only dream, really.
Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser. Well, how much of Rip does your husband in real life have about him?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's a man.
He's Kirsty and Phil.
Can we talk about one other thing?
We can talk about loads of things. It's an interview.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This one from Paul in Fife. Ian, I truly believe Starmer and the Labour Party believe they are toast and that Reform will win the next general election. Their aim between now and then is to wreak so much havoc that any party coming into office will be unable to sort the mess out in a single term. And the British public, being the British public, will not give them the time needed to heal the country. Yeah, I mean, it takes us into that place, doesn't it, when you consider it. I think they think that, and the vanity of politicians is beyond, you know, we talk about the vanity of, you know, sort of singers and famous people and, you know, those that love the spotlight, although so many of those in the spotlight actually are quite introverted people. But those that aren't, I think nothing is greater than the vanity of an ambitious politician. It's somewhat, if you think about what it is they stand for, they believe they have the key to making the world a better place. I mean, that's kind of messianic in so many ways. And it could be encouraging. It's nice optimism to be that ambitious, but it could also be megalomaniacally dangerous. Andrew in Hertfordshire. Andrew, how are you doing?
Good afternoon. It grows ever closer, you and me going to lunch. He's gone, isn't it? It's so interesting.
Yeah. I know. What do we do about that?
Yeah, well, the interesting question is not to us who's going to be the next leader. And you had a brilliant guest. That Liam was really on.
Liam Madigan he's right on the money.
Yeah, and you should listen back to it, people. Or it was brilliant.
Yeah.
The markets will dictate the next leader because there is no way of, and your next guest was really good, of merging the left and the right within the Labour Party. We are going to an election before September because they won't be able to find a leader. And if they do, the markets will destroy the pound.
So you think there's going to be an election, a general election before September?
Has to be, because if you listen to Liam, you can put all you like in there. You could, you know, they wanted someone colourful. Well, then why don't you put, you know, why don't you put Ali Bongo in there or someone like that? I mean, the reality of it is, it doesn't matter who you put in there. If the markets don't like them, they'll drive the pound to the floor. And that's what's going to happen. And then you have to go to the country. Because people's lives...
Yeah.
Bad
so
now.
Things could be about to get up, based on what you're saying. So much, I mean, not a bit worse, but catastrophically worse.
Well, think of it. You've got the Straits of Hormuz. That hasn't hit home yet.
Nope.
You've got the reality of farmers who forward bought fuel for the year, and that was on a 6-month contract. So to put stuff in the ground now, the price of the fuel is through the roof. You've got supermarkets who pay a price to heat and to cool things, and the price of their people. It's the perfect storm. At the same time, we're about to give people more benefits for having children. The IMF, all the bond markets will just say, if you want to use our money, it's 10 points. And by the way, we've spoken to the IMF, and they think you're a basket case. So it's 15 now. It's so interesting. It's such exciting times, Ian. Election before September, you and me on it strong in a restaurant.
Wow. September. That's going to be interesting. So that would... What do you think because you've got to have like a 2-month period before when you announce the election. What's that period? I think it's about 7-8 weeks, something of that nature. So that would mean it would have to be announced in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. So they go for a new leader. The minute they go for a new leader... Everything collapses. They'll announce it. The next morning, the bond markets will destroy the economy because they won't want to lend money to it. They're not doing it for nasty reasons. They can say, right, we're not lending it to them. We're going to lend it to America where we can get a good yield on it and the money's safe because it's not a basket case. Or, just like Liam said, Greece or Italy.
Yeah. So we are going to be Greece or Italy as they once were.
Yeah. And then all the MPs realise that it's pathological hatred for them as people for being in the Labour Party. Get out, go drive a truck for Ocado, and just never be heard of again.
Yeah.
Because people will not forget the individual Labour MPs, and I don't want any damage done to them at all, that got us to this position. It'll be brutal.
It is. I'm really pleased. Events, actually, you've really cheered me up. We're gonna collapse in a heap, but you may well be on the money, and only time will tell. Andrew, thank you, Andrew in Hertfordshire. The markets will decide, and the minute they get a sniff and a whiff of some bad stuff going on down Leftiesville after the crowning of a new Labour leader, there'll be hell to pay. It will be grim. Thank you to, I think it's John, or is it Hugh? Or is it Huey Lewis? It's hard to read Twitter tags sometimes. Great to have Liam Hannigan on. Reference Liz Truss. He didn't have time to answer, but the reality is that the Truss budget created a meltdown in the bond market as the tax cuts were unfunded. The fact that the Bank of England also culpable as they dumped billions on bonds, on bond MLR a few days before the budget. Well, there does seem to be, and I wish I was clever enough to be able to analyse this with any level of authenticity, but I can't. There is a school of thought that if you've given Liz Truss some time and the bond markets hadn't reacted as they did, then everything would have come good. Now, the person that mostly says that is Liz Truss, as you might expect. But there is that thought. I think what Liam was saying is that it's a bit more nuanced than it being one way or the other. There's a bit somewhere in the middle. And Cav says, if Starmer, doesn't call him Starmer, knows that Wes is going to resign tomorrow, why not sack him today? Well, I can only think that he's either... Firstly, he doesn't know exactly that he is, so that he would have then fired a senior cabinet member for no reason. So there's that. Maybe he's taking a kind of moral hike. No, I know you think I should sack him. I'm not going to sack him. No, let him resign himself. I'm not going to give him extra fuel by sacking him. But it was nonetheless, Cav, odd that his spokesperson then said the Prime Minister has full faith in Keir Starmer. Isn't that like playing a bit of a game, a bit of a kind of mafia game? Hey, we like this guy, you know, when really you know he's the man that might end your career. We are going to speak to Harry Miller on free speech arrests in just a moment. It's a postcode lottery where, when it comes to that issue of where you can, and geographically, where you can and can't open your mouth, you say the wrong thing, depends where you live, apparently. Details coming next, right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. It's 25 to 4 o'clock. 25 to 4 o'clock. It's not normally how you say it, is it? 25 to 4 right here on top. I've definitely got man cold coming, all right? It's not quite man flu. Man flu is obviously a critical condition that men get. There's definitely a man cold on the way. Let's talk about this, the Big Brother Watch study that we alluded to a little earlier that's revealed that freedom of expression in Britain is a, quote, postcode lottery, with police in some areas up to 30 times more likely to make arrests for speech-related offences. How could that be? I mean, there's something you'd think there'd be a bit of parity on this. You know, I know certain things are a judgment call, certain crimes or alleged crimes are a judgment call, but would it be that the gap is so wide? Let's speak with Harry Miller, former police officer back in the day, but more profoundly and importantly, founder of Fair Cop today. Harry, afternoon to you. I mean, this does it that 30 times more likely does sort of rather lead you to speculate that there is deliberate policies being put into place in certain areas by certain chiefs or whoever.
Yeah, it's partly that, but this study, good as it is, only tells half the story, in fact, less than half the story, because this was based on an analysis of people who'd entered custody, who'd been arrested as a result of these allegedly committing these offences. Now, it may be, you know, looking at through a rose-coloured lens, that in actual fact, these people did have something to answer for. What concerns me more than that is where police intervene in people's speech, where there is no arrest, where there is a threat of arrest, and police and members of the public are invited in under threat of arrest for what's so-called voluntary interview for speech offences. Now, none of that will be recorded on this particular study. And that, unfortunately, is far more prevalent because the police know more often than not that they've not got a leg to stand on when it comes to these so-called speech offences. So the last thing they want to do is have to justify their intervention and interference in a person's life by bringing them before a sensible custody sergeant. So an awful lot of this goes off the radar or under the radar. Now, there is, just getting back to the study, there is a problem because police do not understand the law. You know, the law around malicious communications is quite simple. If you are sending what all of us would consider to be an obscene or insulting whatever to somebody else, then fine. Then there is a question about that behaviour, and it's right that the police should get involved. But you and I know what an obscene publication is. Is if you send dick pics, for instance, to your ex-girlfriend, that's obscene. We would all recognise that as being obscene. If you send memes to your local synagogue that says Hitler got it right, that's obscene and it needs investigating. But the police, unfortunately, are not limiting themselves to what all of us would consider the intervention of obscenities. They're doing it, they are setting the bar so low that they will intervene if they think anybody has taken an offence. And that's because they don't understand the law. Or maybe they do understand the law and they're being encouraged to make it up and apply it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the Communications Act.
I was just going to say, if, you know, I made this point earlier, Harry, that if you... you know, if somebody writes, oh, did you know that Bob at number 57 is actually a paedophile? I suggest you all go around there and put his windows in. I can understand why you might get a visit from the old Bill. If you also suggest, you know, I'm going to meet some people on the green at 6:30, bring an axe with you, I can also understand that. What I don't understand is when somebody says, oh, look, I've made a sort of a morphed version of the rainbow flag, and therefore the old Bill turn up. So we know, you're right, we know it when we see it. What do you think it is, though, that's happening here? Because every time I speak to a copper, Harry, and you might tell me differently, and I was with a load of police from Sussex Police at a Bravery Award function a couple of weeks ago, and if this comes up, I can't seem to meet a single copper that likes the idea of attending one of these kind of jobs. So who is behind it? Is it the chiefs, College of Policing motivating this? Who is it?
all the above, but most of the police officers I imagine that you speak to will be frontline operational response police officers, and they're far too busy dealing with real policing, dealing with domestics, dealing with overdoses, dealing with hangings, dealing with car crashes, dealing with burglaries. They're far too busy dealing with that to bother with all this kind of nonsense. But of course, there are special units within police forces called neighbourhood policing. Now, once upon a time, your neighbourhood police officer would go around and teach you cycling proficiency, or go around and tell you how to keep your house safe. They're not doing that anymore. What they're doing is they are going around looking for offence. They are teaching people about how to be offended. And if they can get positive feedback on somebody being offended, then they've got a job to do. So it's these community officers, these so-called neighbourhood police officers, who are being urged on by not necessarily chief constables, but by woke middle management within the police to go out and do all this. This is where the trouble starts.
22 arrests every single day. I mean, I find that incredible, that 22 people, not 22 people having visits from the police. I'm sure the figure is higher than that, but 22 actual arrests. I mean, that is... Look, there may be inciting racial hatred, organising riots and all the rest of it. I get that. But 22 every single day, Harry, I mean, that seems extraordinary and extreme.
Yeah, it is. And of course, it gets even worse from 2023 onwards with Section 179 of the Online Safety Act, which makes it a criminal offence to knowingly publish something which is false, which causes non-trivial psychological harm. Well, hold on a minute. Who is it who's going to decide what is a falsehood? You see, if you talk about something like theft, for theft to be a crime, you establish ownership of property. If you can show that you own the property and somebody else has taken it, then you've got the basis for a theft. But on this, somebody's got to decide what is the truth. What is the truth? Well, very often the truth is up for grabs. Very often the truth is not, we're not quite certain what the truth is. It's only a few hundred years ago that if you said that the sun was the center of the earth, was the center of the universe and not the earth, that was a untruth. Just a few years ago, if you question COVID vaccinations or lockdown, that could be classed as an untruth. So now all the government needs to say is to declare that something is true. And then, if there is any dissent and you say it is not true, you are halfway to committing an offence. That is absolutely terrible. I myself was taken in for questioning 2 years ago by Lincolnshire Police under Section 179 of the Online Safety Act. My crime was to misgender somebody in print. I'd written an article for the Critic magazine called My Police Stalker, and I named my stalker a former police officer, Lindsay Watson. I said my stalker was a man, and I was brought in under Section 179 of the Online Safety Act for misgendering. The crime put to me was Section 179 of the Online Safety Act, publishing false information. That's how crazy this is, Ian.
Did you manage, I mean, separate point in some respects, Harry, but did you manage at any point when you were talking to the interviewing officers, did you manage to sort of penetrate the ridiculousness of this and say, guys, surely you must know this is ridiculous?
That's exactly what I said, but they weren't having it. I'll tell you, it was quite a funny story. I said, are you sure you want to interview me about this? This is going to end very, very badly for you. And when they put it to me and all that, I ended up arresting the detective sergeant. I mean, he wasn't having any of it. But
you did a citizen's arrest?
I did a citizen's arrest. I did, absolutely. I said, if that's all you've got, then as far as I'm concerned, you're making threats against me with harassment because you said if I didn't come in for a voluntary interview, you would arrest me. As far as I'm concerned, you are not. You are stalking and harassing me. I'm now arresting you. That's not normal behaviour, I admit. I wouldn't suggest that any of talkTV's and radio's listeners tried that.
No, I get that, but it is
sometimes extreme events like this need extreme measures. And we're now, by the way, taking the Chief Constable through the High Court for that nonsense. And I would encourage other people to do precisely the same as far as that's concerned.
Harry, great to have you on as ever. Interesting point to finish on as well. Harry Miller, former police officer, founder of Fair Cop. It's all over the place, this. The idea that you would have a visit from the police because you misgendered someone is palpably ridiculous. Even if you did it on purpose, it's ridiculous. That is not what the police are for. It is not recognised by any kind of... I mean, these are sort of digital world type, in inverted commas, crimes. There's no kind of non-digital equivalence of that kind of level of stupidity. It would be like, I suppose the nearest I could think of, it would be like getting a knock on the door at midnight because you dropped some litter in a supermarket or something like that. It's objectively ridiculous and a waste of everybody's time. 0344 499 1000. Claire says, did nobody notice Calamity Lammy? He couldn't kneel down to give the king the speech. I thought he was going to be man down. Then he tried to walk backwards. God help us. This is the Deputy Prime Minister. I did watch that clip earlier, and I thought, God, he's probably practiced that 27 times before he came to work that morning. Probably practiced it in his, in the hallway at home. Right, definitely right knee down, left foot forward, right knee down. And then he did the very opposite. He probably overthought it. And then ended up having a kind of a sort of okey-cokey, but just him in it, which was quite funny. Joanna in Salisbury says, who would I vote for? None of the above. How about Carl Turner or Graham Stringer? I guess they wouldn't choose someone with a brain, which was shown by taking the whip away from Carl Turner, which they did. Not to be returned anytime soon, it seems. Oh, well, it might be if you get a new leader. 0344 499 1000. We're back with more from you in a couple of moments' time. It's just gone 3:45. This is Talk.
Brand new for 2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. Promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. 0344 499 1000. This from John in Paul, who says, if it were up to me, I would rather vote for the weather to be our Prime Minister. At least the weather is able to stop the migrant boats. That's it, yeah. I mean, that does actually transpire to be a fact. This one from Trevor in Harrow, although currently in San Francisco, says, Peter Shaw is the only Labour candidate that I can back, even though he died 20 years ago. Can a pass-on candidate still run? Interesting. That's where we've got to, that people are now thinking of dead politicians who would be preferable to the ones we currently have. Bobby says, afternoon, Ian. Oh, God, I am desperate to get Wes Streeting in as PM for no other reason. He will have to get rid of all those knee-bending, grovelling idiots. Darren Jones, Liz Kendall, Lammy, Reeves, the defence plonker, Steve Reed. They will all have to go, says Robbie. Or is it Bobby? Thank you, Robbie. And one in from Tanya, who says, is Tanya or Tanya? Is that interchangeable? Tanya, Tanya. Finn says they're not interchangeable. No, that's what I'm saying. That if you get one wrong of the other, I don't know why people get very... When it's literally... If you're given an interchangeable name, you have to take that. I'm sorry. I don't know about this particular Tanya or Tanya. You have to take it. How would anybody know your name? Pronouncement? Yes. How to pronounce your name. If they never met you. So they see it written down, they go, all right, Tanya, and somebody goes, Tanya! You'd never know. Anyway, Tanya in London says, I didn't think, Ian, it was possible to hate this administration further. Then I heard the two words digital ID. Surely there is a GDPR issue with it when all of our data is found on TMU. Yes, there is that as well. I would also throw in, it's exactly the same question I throw up about the electric car. We don't need it. We just don't need it. It might be a smart idea and it might be great for a few boffins in the tech world and Silicon Valley to monkey it. Why do we need the self-driving car? Just don't need it. Here's Georgina down in London. Georgina, hi.
Hello, good afternoon, Ian.
Good afternoon.
Well, I've been watching everything that's been going on with the government, and it's more interesting than watching one of those soaps that people watch on the television. I mean, the candidates that are circling for the premiership are, in my opinion, as useless as Keir Starmer. They all advocate for the same policies that have brought our economy to its knees and have caused a visceral divide within our society. Listening to the King's speech today just confirms that Starmer's not listened to the electorate at all, and his government is going to double down on the Labour policies that will be the ruination of our country, the erosion of our culture, and will take away the future for our children to grow up in a Britain that is great. These are exactly the policies that we've been fighting against, Ian. But Starmer, yet again, has totally disregarded the will of the people. Any government who takes away the electorate's voice and rights are not a democratic government. They are a dictatorship. And that is exactly the government that we have at the moment, a dictatorship that is in complete chaos. The people who are circling to be the leader are just as much, if not more, to the left than Starmer himself.
Even Wes Streeting.
Even Wes Streeting, we'd be jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, Ian. Dictators don't resign, and Starmer will not relinquish his position.
So what happens tomorrow then, Georgina, when Wes goes, hey, I'm all in for the lead, I challenge you to a duel, Prime Minister?
Well, I think that Starmer will get the majority vote in the House. That's what I think, because the majority vote are as stupid as he is. He likes to, this man, he likes to be admired by his EU cronies. He likes to feel like an international player and a powerful statesman, Ian. But unfortunately, he is an international embarrassment, and I think we're going to be stuck with this weak, indecisive, but politically dangerous individual until there's a call for a general election. And by the way things are going, I don't think that's going to be too far away. I just wish we had someone with the testicular fortitude like Margaret Thatcher, who could really sort this mess out.
Well, who is there? Is there anyone that you can see, Georgina? No one in the Labour government, Labour Party that you could go, well, they could give it a go.
Honestly, there's no one who has the mental capacity. I mean, I look at David Lammy, and honestly, I put my head in my hands. I look at Wes Streeting, and he's a wet lettuce. All these people haven't got the mental capacity to run a country. They can't even balance their own books. This is a ridiculous situation. We need people to come in who know their job, who are on point, who can sort this mess out. Honestly, it's now becoming, we're an international laughingstock. Yeah. And I really do think we need to get something done, and quickly, because as each day goes by, this mess is getting deeper and deeper. So I really do think if Keir Starmer listens to this programme, and I hope he does, because he might learn something, for goodness sake, you may be a great dad and a good husband, but you are the lousy Prime Minister, and we need a change.
I like it. Georgina, lovely stuff. Thank you very much indeed for that. At the moment, Keir Starmer is in the House of Commons. This, of course, is the response to the King's speech, and all the rest of it allows politicians. It's a sort of rare moment where they can kind of do a little bit of roasting of events, policies, and opposition. Kemi Badenoch appeared to... I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I was watching. Appeared to have them rolling in the aisles on the opposition benches. Starmer's trying to do something similar, although I think he's now got serious. He's saying we need to strengthen NATO. I don't think that's a joke. I think he's meant to be serious. What is interesting, there he is on the front bench. He's flanked by David Lammy. Rachel Reeves is there as well. There is no sign of Wes Streeting. He ain't nowhere to be seen. Another Rachel says, good afternoon, Ian. As a Reform voter, I'd like Angela Rayner or Ed Miliband, as that would secure a general election in the near future due to the inevitable disaster. But Wes Streeting does seem decent. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because there is that temptation. You're sort of caught between anyone should want their Prime Minister to succeed. Obviously, you want growth, even if you don't support them or vote for them. By the same token, if you want to see them really fall apart, then stick Ed or Ange into the top job. Kevin O'Sullivan is here. Afternoon, Kev.
Hello, Ian. I'm tempted to say it's all going on, but you keep saying that, and then you think, actually, what is going on?
What is going on?
There is word going around that Streeting already has resigned. He pointed he didn't sit on the front benches during the King's speech, and that could be that he's already gone. But it does look like he's going to move